But the other thing her sister tells her is, stay away from Xaden Ryerson. He is the son of the guy who started the revolution, and our mom killed him, so he probably wants to kill you, and if he finds out you're a Sorengale, he'll want to kill you. So you know they're gonna fuck. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast. We just got a comment that was like, when I first started watching your podcast and you said that, I thought it was a bit pretentious, but now it's like, it's true. You are my favorite podcast. And to you, I say, I'm glad it worked. I'm glad we got there in the end.
Pretentious? You have to fake it till you make it. What the hell? It might not have been
pretentious. Let me get, because I don't want to misquote the person.
Anyway, we appreciate you, our parasocial darlings, and all of the people who watch this.
Kind of gimmicky.
Oh, it is gimmicky. It is gimmicky.
It's me, Maria, your host. There was a bit I was doing, William, where I went off a tangent, and then I was coming back.
It was taking too long.
I know. It's me, your host, Maria, and physically with me today is one of my handsome bitches, Katie, and digitally with me today is my other handsome bitch, William.
Hey, what book are we doing today, guys?
Fourth Wing.
So, we gotta talk about this book. Fourth Wing is a recent novel that's been very popular in the YA and book talk sphere. And so I was like, you know what, it's a long book, but I like to be relevant to the culture. What happened is I said in our Discord chat, hey, do you guys mind if we read a bad book? Fourth Wing could do for good for the algorithm. And several people immediately got the book and started reading it, regardless of the fact that I had just said I'm thinking about it. And at that point, I felt obligated to choose it. And then immediately another 5 or 6 people read it within the span of a day and a half and trauma bonded over it.
Everybody was talking about it together before I had even known that we were going to be doing it almost. Yep. And I was like, what's this Fourth Wing book?
This is the first time that I feel like the Discord has really taken on a life of its own beyond us, because they just did their own thing and now we're along for the ride.
So much of my book was like I would read something, then go to the Discord to see what other people had said about it.
Oh, I didn't even look yet.
Oh man, let me tell you, I'm going to read a couple of their final thoughts paragraphs, and then you need to edit it into a short, William, because. Excellent. This was a bonding experience for, I feel like we have people in our Patreon and Discord who are
we'll put Pandora's box before us, and I was thinking of opening this, guys.
What do you think?
There is a little bit of controversy, completely unearned, that I got this book started and not the patrons. And I would just like to say, as an impartial judge, that's bullshit.
Confess to the forum, you son of a motherless goat.
No, the greatest insult you could offer me is Xaden.
We should also say it's by this lady named Rebecca Yarros. I know the name for once, for I have cursed it.
Cursed? Oh, come now.
Cursed it in my
That's so over dramatic.
So first, let me say something. This book is all over YouTube. There's been a lot of YouTubers that have commented on it. Some that are kind of like fine about it. Like they don't get the hype, but they're just eh. And some who are like, is this the worst book of 2023?
It is not the worst book of 2023, but it is also not the best book of 2023.
It's the worst book we've read.
I disagree.
For the podcast.
For the podcast?
Yes.
The problem is that
Save Your Sisters exists, and Cyborg Tinkerer.
That is actually a good point. Save Your Sister
I was going to say, the thing is this is more cohesive than some of the other pieces we've written, which, I'm not saying it's great. Hey, it is.
I don't think it's very
Then
cohesive.
Cyborg Tinkerer.
Yes, and Cyborg Tinkerer, but I don't think that's if Cyborg Tinkerer is down here.
You guys were saying it's the worst. I said this year we didn't read Cyborg Tinkerer or Save Your Sister this year.
The big problem with this book, honestly, is that it's too long. So a dumb thing doesn't happen once, it happens 6 times. We don't hear about how Xaden is hot 1 time in a gross way. We hear about it 9 times. Maybe 35. It's such a long book and so little happens.
I want to finish my disclaimer really quick.
Okay.
There is an audience of people who are going to enjoy this book, because here is what this book is. This book is a contemporary romance with the veneer of fantasy.
I was just going to say.
It is, when you're a part of a fandom and artists, like, they take the Star Wars characters and they put them in bikinis and they're on, like, the beach, like, playing volleyball.
Or you get the Game of Thrones characters, but they're in contemporary clothing and they're in jeans and they're, like, at the mall.
I haven't written that.
That was all you.
But that is what this book is. It is a contemporary romance with the veneer of fantasy. For the first 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the book, that is literally it. It is a school fantasy, like a school setting that could be and should be. I will argue that this should be set in a different, more contemporary world, and it would probably work better, but with the veneer of fantasy over. So if you want a splash of some fantasy and you want, like, a real weird enemies to lover romance and you want smut and you want a good beach read, sure.
That's what I told Maria yesterday.
Yes.
Is I said that...
But it's not the best version of a beach read.
No, I've had better beach reads, but the point is this is not the worst book. This is not even in the grand scheme of all the things I have ever read, it's not even on the top 10 of bad books. But, hey, I don't care. Let me say my piece.
No, say.
But... yeah, no, it's not good. Like, you know what? I was accepting of it up until it got to, I mean, not that there weren't things wrong with it, like, technically speaking, but it was, like, enjoyable up until the part where literally Xaden became literally the only focus of the entire piece, because prior to that, it was kind of fun being like, oh, what is she gonna overcome? What's her power? All that stuff. And it's, like, a little bit more, like, interesting, but then it just full on focuses and show its, like, hand, and it's just full on porn. And it's not good porn, and it's not an interesting romance, so it's really tacky. And I honestly was so uncomfortable listening to the audiobook during the first sex scene that I stopped listening to it for the day.
God, it was awful, and they talk so much, and it's so stupid.
And the word leverage gets used 3 times in the first sex scene. Why is anyone tthinking of leverage?
I don't like it when people's
sex?
Powers go crazy during sex. Unless it's really funny, then it's not really, like...
Okay, overarching, not specific, guys. Anyway, so my point is, there are going to be people who like this book. Now, I think those can be younger audiences, and I also think...
What?
Yes, she has
I was expecting that to happen as well. I wanted her leg to pop out during sex. Yeah, I know. I thought that was going to happen.
How does everything else in her life bruise her and stuff, but she goes through a railing during sex?
She tripped and dislocated her knee. Now, granted, that was prior to all her inner thigh workouts that she did on the magical machine that exists in this world.
She should have at least had bruises, given what we've come to know. Anyway, the point is, their younger audiences, I think, are going to resonate with this, especially if this is their first foray into fantasy and they don't know.
She's published 20 books. Yeah, I know. Once I learned that.
That really helps me, because Katie and I were going on yesterday.
Oh, we were arguing. I was if this is like 6 books and under, I feel like some of the things that she did, it's like, yeah, like, I'm okay. I'm like 100% okay.
Because I was like, no, it's terrible.
But then if it's more than 6 books, I was going to be like, well, then, like, there are certain things that I don't feel like she's learned at this point and she needs to learn. But then also, you have to ask yourself, like, does she even care about creating a book that's highbrow? Maybe she doesn't care. Maybe she's just writing this so that way she can get, like, you know, other people's nillies going.
There are people who their millies are going to get going. A lot of, I imagine some of the, someone in our Discord said, if you're like an older millennial who hasn't read in a while since high school.
Oh, this would be super enjoyable, I'm sure.
For the, like, taste of fantasy, this might do it for you. But as someone who reads regularly, who has read better romances, better beach reads, and better fantasy novels, this parades as a fantasy novel and commits incredible sins as pretending to be a fantasy novel.
I know, I agree on that.
If it was not pretending to be a fantasy novel, I think a lot of these things, it wouldn't even bug me as much. But it is pretending to have
that higher fantasy nature to it. And unfortunately, it's just, the thing is it would be way more forgivable, all the bad sex scenes and stuff and all the, like, whatever character stuff, if the world itself was more interesting.
Megan says, the biggest problem, in my opinion, was the total lack of effort to world building.
Yeah.
And this not being her genre makes a lot of sense. Valerie says,
is it not her genre? Like, is there any other I don't know if she's written.
She mostly does, like, military romance.
Yeah, because she, I think
She's a military
Marine,
wife.
Marine husband, 6 kids.
Because you can tell from this novel, she really understands the military and didn't just didn't just watch the first part of Full Metal Jacket and go, oh, what about that, but more extreme?
There's different reading experiences if you can't tell. Really quick, let's just go over overall. Will, what was your feelings on this book?
My feeling is that we are too far in this review for you guys not to understand the rage that wells within me at having to read this. Now, this was not a Rage of Achilles kind of rage where it was quite hot and intense, and I hated everyone and anyone who had ever said a kind thing about that book. To this day, I still find it infuriating that on an existential level that someone thinks that's a good book and that someone wrote it. Author jail for 10,000 years. But this book more was a rage at the dying of the light. Like, it kind of wore me down with just the depression of how long and bad it was. I kept having to hear how the main male character was hot. Then the author wrote like the worst kind of romance tropes of I love you, and you're so hot, and then stuff about my cock, and I'm like, oh god, will you shut the fuck up? I hate every moment of this sex scene. And then at the end, stuff suddenly happens. There's so much in this book that happens but doesn't mean anything. This book was really painful to read. It's so bad. Believe me, my criticisms will grow more granular as this review goes on, but you needed to understand the full breadth and width of my fury.
So, I'm not far off from Will.
I think I have a lot more patience with this book than both of you guys combined.
I hated it from the first chapter.
I did not hate it from the first chapter. I think there's a lot of things that she is doing well in this, and I think that there are things that that she should be like. I would love to, personally, if I were to actually approach this from like a critical eye, I'd be curious to know what her normal wheelhouse, or if this, like some of her other material, if I were to actually critique her as an author. The book in and of itself has a couple of good things. It has enough good things that I can understand why people like it. And then, but majority, if we're going to be critical of it, it's not doing its job in a lot of areas.
It is a book that wants to have the language and veneer of modern society and a modern working romance in a world with indoor plumbing that where people say for the win.
God,
he
he's
wants
being
attention.
Such a baby. Oh my god.
One thing I will say is that actually when I started this book, I didn't think it was quite as bad as everyone was saying. The thing that really got to me is just how long it is. Again, it kind of wears you down over time. For the wing, am I right, fellers? Oh, that's so good. Oh, here it is. Lindbergh said earlier, this book is about an uppity girl at murder school getting fought over by jerks and babied by an ancient dragon. Oh, God.
Yes, that is a perfect summary. That is a absolutely perfect summary.
So one thing I will say, this book, outside of like the first few chapters, which I felt were really slow, like it hits a point where it just goes. Like it just... There's stuff happening, and it, as far as a read, you can slam away... there were points where that I had to stop because things made me cringe so hard that I had to like pause and stop. But you could slam away through an hour or two of this book, relatively, because it just flies. Like, and it was shallow enough that like I could like do something that required like 70% of my attention, have this going in the background, and I still knew what was happening in the book. For me, one of the most egregious things is this. Not to mention there's basically no dragon riding in the dragon riding book. Yeah. But for me, one of the most egregious things is that the first 3/4 of the book is just girl at school. And it is a school drama. And there is no overarching, like there's tiny, tiny, tiny little baby crumbs of an overarching actual plot. And I'm going to compare this to a book series that I don't often think of lately because I don't care to, but Harry Potter. Because it is also set in a school. Even in the earlier books, which I argue are the better books because they're staying silly in the Harry Potter universe, while there is the school stuff that's happening, the overarching plot, like, oh, what's the Sorcerer's Stone? What are they hiding on level 3?
Well, see, what works with that
is there a troll in the dungeon?
Yeah, so the thing that works with that is there are little bubbles of epic moments that come in, and also it's like it's woven in between the plot points.
And it's also bigger than the actual school drama shit. Like, Harry Potter's biggest problems is not the test in Defense Against the Dark Arts, it's the troll in the fucking dungeon. Who's controlling? Was was it Professor Snape? Like there's a whole fucking conspiracy that these kids are latching onto throughout the entirety of the book. And that is what makes it work better even though it's stuck in the setting of a school, there is an overarching plot. This book fails that absolutely. Lindbergh says, the book opens with stay away from Zayden Ryerson. He will kill you. And that's how you know they're going to bang.
Yeah, I knew that too. As soon as it said that. And then when it was like his gorgeous face, at first I thought it was Dane that she was describing, that like he was there. And then she was like, oh, I've met up with Dane again. And then no, it's some rando. And I was like, who the hell is this? Why is she so horny?
Yep. Immediately.
It's interesting because as much as Song of Achilles is my least favorite book we've read this year, Zayden may be my least favorite character we've read this year. And that's tough because Patroclus, I wanted him to get run over by a train multiple times and be alive for each one so he could experience each death as his mangled body was
Jesus, William,
dismembered.
that is so extra.
That's how I felt about Patroclus. And he would probably have been like, oh, and I love Achilles the whole time. Can you imagine?
Zayden is definitely one of the worst characters we've ever read, honestly, besides Gwendolyn fucking Grimm.
Sorry, I just wanted to finish my point from before. All of the plot that should have been spread out through the entirety of the book gets shoved into the last fourth. Like, the entire extra overarching plot that should be happening, it's in the last fourth. That's it.
You're totally right. Harry Potter is actually a very good reference because those books are actually really masterful in how they handle the differing tensions and plot lines that go through, and that central mystery of whatever the book is a nice tension arc and forms what's going on. It's like a spine to the book and the story. And this doesn't have that. It's just a lot of tests one after another, and then suddenly at the end, it's like, oh, and then we have an epic battle. So the problem is that this book engages in a really high amount of emotionality in its sex scene and in its battle at the end. And neither of them are built up. Neither of them have the foundation to be effective. And that's one of the ways that you know this book isn't trying to be a dumb read, is it wants to build to these levels of emotionality and significance, but it has not, it put in the work. It's just that the author doesn't have any talent. And so that's why it doesn't work.
Angry Otter says, I've informed my family they can have Pop-Tarts for breakfast. This is more important. We're glad your priorities are in order. For me, it reminds me a little bit of the unearned emotionality of The Wrath and the Dawn, where that last fourth just brought all, like, these characters who had barely, like, and so the one thing I will give this is the characters interacted more than the characters interacted in that book. But you're right, the emotionality just doesn't feel, and specifically Liam, as much as he is one of the better characters in the book, he is not around enough, and the bond with him and Violet is not developed enough to make the emotionality at the end really work. And honestly, one of the ways to do it is to impart a super level of emotionality between the writers and the dragons, so that when he loses his dragon, that's the part you feel bad
Why
for.
did we care about Day at all? We never met Day. So when he dies, or she dies, or whatever, like, it doesn't matter. All we care about is Liam's death. So, but then we lose half the death process there.
Yep. And there's a lack of, like, in Temeraire, you really feel the bond between Lawrence and Temeraire. You really feel that bond. But this is a magical bond. This isn't just, hey, we get along. Can you stop annoying Katie?
Let me put it like this. Maria, at the point where Liam's dragon and him die and all that, did that make you cry or did you feel the same emotionality as when that dragon in the first book is dying and their captain won't go see them?
No.
I didn't cry at all. I literally was
was no tear.
I was making my breakfast and I was like, God, how much more of this stuff do I have to go?
That's where I was at as well this morning.
Jesus Christ.
Because I finished this book literally when I walked through Maria's front door.
Katie, would you like to start?
So we are set in a world where there are dragons, obviously. You've probably cottoned on to that point at this point. There are also griffins. There are also griffins. And there are many countries in this fantasy world, and there
only two that matter.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. The griffins versus the dragon people.
I think it's Tyrandor versus
and
something
it's Navarre. No, it's Navarre.
No, we're Navarre.
Yeah.
We're Navarre, and then it's something with a P.
It doesn't matter.
This book's world building is shallow. I barely know names.
And then
things.
I don't think she did it as an info dump, but our main character also recites information. I know.
Oh, it's not an info dump. Let me just have my
sarcasm. It's sarcasm.
Okay, no, that was the worst. Oh my god, that annoyed me so much.
Info dump when she was reciting the information, so she wasn't.
Wait, Poramil was the other country. I knew it started with V. Navarre, where I live.
Yes.
Says the character. Okay,
I didn't even get that far.
Go.
There's Dragon Country and there is Griffin Country, and they are at war. And our main character is the daughter of a high-ranking military official who is very shallowly written, very bitchy, and not in a fun female, feminine, bitchy, hot bitchiness that Will likes way.
Irrational.
Yeah, irrationally. Like, for example, our main character, Violet, has been summoned, and she is being conscripted, essentially, to be a dragon rider.
Just to see if she can become it. Not to actually be one, just to apply to be one.
You guys are underselling this so much.
Fine,
Okay,
do it.
So our girl Violet is going to her mama's, and she's out of breath. She's
Jesus, you are so
she's lugging a bag that's super heavy. She's like, 6 months of training to become a dragon rider, and I can barely get up the stairs. Because what you learn is our girl Violet, for the past 12 years of her life, has not been training to be a dragon rider, which is something that you should be training for very long parts of your life. No, she's been in the library.
Scribe training.
She's been scribe training with her father for the past 12 years. And as she walks up to the general's office, and then it's like, and it's my mom's office, because it's one of those things where like, oh yeah, her mom's the general. Someone is yelling at the general, and she's like, I know who it is. And it's basically her sister Mira being like, do you want your daughter to die? Do you want my sister to die? You are sending her to death, mother. What are you doing? Like, stop it. And basically, the idea is our girl Violet, she's weak. Not just like, I have never trained for anything weak, but she literally gets bruised easily. She has broken bones. She literally, if she bumps her knee, like if she hits her knee, the kneecap will slide off. Like, this girl is not built for physicality. And her sister is like, she's literally gonna die if you send her into the dragon quadrant.
And mom's like, yeah, well, she's a soaring gale, so either she's a dragon rider or she dies. She's literally bringing forth the ride or die trope.
And she says, your sister has dealt with more pain this morning before breakfast than you've dealt with your entire life, Mira. She's perfect to be a dragon, even though apparently from what Violet tells you in her narration, her mother has always been disappointed with her. Her mother has never been proud of her. And she was allowed to train as a scribe for the past 12 years while her father was alive. Her father died a bit ago, and then her mom was like, fuck it, you're gonna be a dragon rider, and threw her into dragon rider training. Ma'am, if you want to kill your daughter, just kill your daughter.
Also, I kind of have a feeling that there's going to be a twist at some point if we have to read the second book, and the mom actually killed the dad. Just throwing that out there.
Here's the problem. I'm sure there's some kind of plot twist coming with her mother being a dick. In this book, it makes no sense. And right off the bat, it really destroys the realism of the world to have a character act in such an inexplicable way. Because this is going to come up several times, because it's a defense I've heard of this book and other books, is that this is the first book. If there's something inexplicable, you know it's going to be explained in later books, and that's okay. No, you lazy catamite.
100% agree with you, William.
We talked about this actually in our House of Salt and Sorrow review, that the plot twists in there actually make sense, but the problem is that plot twists don't retroactively make your reading experience with the book have made sense at the moment. You don't suddenly go, oh, that jarred me out of the book when I read it, but now my sense memory going backwards, you still have the jarred out of the realism of the world problem that a plot twist has. And so there's going to be several things in this book that you're like, that didn't make any sense. And people are going to argue, oh, it's not like, okay, so the dragons, when we get there, makes no sense. None. That Oppo research podcast I did talked about how like, oh, obviously there's supposed to be some mysteries in a book. No. Anyway, another thing to mention is that I believe specifically Violet has EDS.
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
I'm going to talk later because we tend to front load our criticism sometimes, but I feel like the disability was very ill-defined by the book and that I couldn't quite figure out what it was besides a vague, my joints are weak.
The thing that I think I was the saddest letdown of this entire novel is that and Marie and I had an argument over it yesterday, but like now that I see that I've finished the entire book and I see that she did nothing with it, it's like, why even give that as a character, like, a trait if you're not going to utilize it in some way to make her different from everyone else. In the end, she became just like everyone else. So it was just like, eh. And I like characters that are disabled and have to like work with their disability. It's because there's a different mindset and a really cool and sad, but cool emotional play that happens between people and situations. And I love it. And it just, it didn't get used like at all, except for at literally like the first 3 chapters.
And randomly throughout the book where like she would just get injured or like need to wrap her knee because it was going to dislocate.
The other thing to note is that her mother isn't just sending her into like Dragon Rider Academy. No. This is Death Camp Rider Academy. All these are citizens, right? Powerful people who ride dragons. They send their children into a place that has a, no joke, 50 to 70% kill rate. They like start off with like 160 people and end up with 70 at the end of it. Again, the author watched Full Metal Jacket and was like, this is an understatement, isn't it? And again, this is a military author. Like the author knows about the military. Peachy Keen had a really great post on our Discord talking about how stupid a lot of this is, a lot of the death camp nonsense is that we're going to talk about in terms of instilling military discipline. But so she for sure knows her daughter is not going to survive in this environment.
It's so weird.
And it just makes no sense. And you as a reader are like, again, I literally was like, madam, if you want to kill your daughter, just kill your daughter. I guarantee you there's easier ways to do this. What is the goal here? Anyway, so she's like, no, she has to. She can't go into the scribe quadrant, even though that's what she trained for her whole life. She's got to go do the parapet.
Even though she was noted as being one of the star pupils of the like head scribe or whatever, and they all thought and expected great things from her in the scribe quadrant. It's like, why would you take away an asset like that from the place where they're really good?
Yep. Also, she's been described as having a very close relationship with the healers in this. So she lives at Besgaeth, which is the school of the military, which has different quadrants. There's the scribe, healers, and the writers quadrant. The writers quadrant being the only one with the crazy high death toll. But her entire life here, she has spent getting to know the healers, and they know her super well because she gets, even in daily life, like running around as a child, she gets injured very easily. Okay, she breaks bones easier. Her joints are super weak. They're like so many issues, and her mom's like, "Nope, you're gonna go do the thing with all the physicality," and it's just it's not great. But anyway, Mira's like, "Don't do this," and she's like, "I have to. Mom's gonna make me." Mira's her sister, and Mira's like, "Excellent, heckin' good dragon rider. She's strong." Also, I should say that her mother got sick with a really bad fever while she was pregnant with her, our main character, Violet, and so Violet has silver tipped hair, and no matter what, if she cuts her hair, it'll still be silver. Like the ends will turn silver at whatever length she cuts it, because her mom's like, you should cut your hair and get rid of that silver thing. And she's like, Mom, you obviously know that if I cut my hair, it'll still be silver at the end, which is the weirdest way to tell the audience that. Like, why did your mom act like she didn't know that? That's a really weird thing for someone to forget. Can you leave Katie alone?
So the thing about Violet is that for some reason she accepts this, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because if this is a society where you go and into like a specific caste instead of just like it's treated less as like a school path and more like a caste that you're entering, i.e. Divergent, which this book reads a lot like. So it doesn't seem like something her mother would actually be able to change. It feels like societally, if she wanted to be a scribe, she could just be a scribe. And so she just is kind of like, I guess I have to do what my mother says. And the problem with this is it makes her a passive character. And this is going to become more of a problem as the book goes on, and it becomes less explicable why she wants to be a dragon rider or why she sticks with this. Like, just to go be a scribe. I don't understand her motivation for this. It's never sold to us why she decides to persist in this death academy.
The author tries to do a retcon where like it's set up that she has wanted to be a scribe, she's been training to be a scribe, and then like there's a scene halfway through the book where she has a memory of a young baby her talking to her dad, being like, why can't I be a writer like Mama, Mira, and Bren and Papa? And he's like, that's not your path, darling girl. And she's like, okay, Daddy. And so the idea is, at her heart, since she was a little baby girl, she did want to be a dragon rider.
She liked being a scribe, and she loved scribe, and that's where she imagines herself, not on her dragon's back, not in the academy, but in the scribe place.
I'm so glad you were angry about the motivations of this as I am.
And at the book, the end will insist that scribes have a really super important job, even more so than dragons. And you'll be like, oh, that's an interesting twist that's not is not borne out by the novel as a whole. One of the people who commented that really it should have been she wanted to join the dragons and her mother didn't want her to because she thought she'd embarrass the family.
Exactly.
This was the exact argument I had when I first was reading this book, that a lot of the things would be solved is if Mama was like, no, you are not being a dragon rider. Your dad has trained you to be a scribe. You are going to be a scribe. You are not allowed. And she was like, I'm going to do it anyway, Mama. Because it makes way more sense for the mom to want to be like protective of her.
And then Mira supporting her, but also disagreeing with her choice, but also like believing in her. And then that makes a lot more sense.
It would make, and thus it would take away that weird, like, why didn't you just go be a, because she's given multiple outs we're going to get to go be a scribe and have ways to kind of thwart her mother's expectation that she just chooses not to take, which again is that muddy motivation we're talking about. And just having her want to be a dragon rider her whole life would fix that from the beginning. Like, she trained as a scribe, but her heart was never in it. She wanted to be like Mama and Brennan and Mira. Brennan's her older brother, who's dead, by the way. Anyway.
Or is he?
Also,
as a side note, I think if I had read this book, I might have a slightly harsher opinion of it than
so much worse.
If I had, since I listened to it. Because I listened to it at 2 times speed to get through it in 2 days. So I didn't get to really like stew in it. And I think if I had read the prose, I think I would have been a little bit more on your side, Will. Maybe? I'm not sure.
The prose is worse. Like, again, I noticed so much more of repetition of words.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You don't notice it at all at 2 times speed while listening to the audiobook.
She goes to go into the academy. And the way to get into the academy is one of the most deadly things. Because first, you have to take a entrance exam just to get into Viscaya as the war college, right?
I do like that name. Viscaya.
There are some names that are pretty like decent, but a lot of them are just Celtic. Once you get into the actual war college and you're going into the quadrant you want to go into, the one to get into the rider's quadrant is the worst. You have to cross the parapet.
Which is a cool name.
It is just a giant, thin wall path that connects you from like one area to the actual rider's quadrant.
I kind of pictured the scene from Lord of the Rings with the really thin bridge, and but instead of a instead it was like, yeah, instead of that really epic scene, it was more like Jack Barlow. Why is his name Jack Barlow? I hate that name.
Listen, I have so much problems. Again, most of my problems with this book
sounds like a Tom Sawyer name.
So here's the thing. You have to cross that bridge walking across it. And also, they don't make like, if it's raining, you don't do it that day. If it's raining that day, you're shit out of luck. I guess 30% of your graduating, your academy students just die because it happened to rain that day versus not. It's so stupid that this is the way they do it when it's so unsafe.
If it's windy, and the thing is, it's literally just taking healthy individuals and you're testing their balance to see how good they would be on Dragonback. That is something you can train, my guys. Like, that is something you can train. And from what we know, there are no previous schools for dragon riding. That means, because listen, I am absolutely okay is if you have been training at an actual school for dragon riding and this is your final exam, you need to cross this parapet. It is mimicking whatever. No, this is how you get in. You have to, and it's luck. And also, her sister is like, here.
Oh my God, what a great point.
Her mom controls storms. Why was it rainy and windy? So her sister also knows, Mira, that you need really grippy shoes. Why does nobody else know this? It is a thin, narrow ledge. You need grip for days.
It's not a secret.
Out there. Lots of people don't know that you need grippy shoes, so they showed up in smooth-soled riding boots.
Because next to Mary Sue, everyone else is a fucking idiot.
Her sister Mira gave her dragon riding boots that are super grippy on the bottom. God, don't get me started on the fact that nobody uses saddles. We'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's against the rules.
Also, like, why would you? Anyway. So she's standing in line, and also the other thing. So her sister was like, "Here are some grippy shoes. Tie up your hair and braid it. so that people can't grab it, which is never something. I was waiting for somebody to grab her hair.
Never
and for
happens.
her to come to terms with the fact that she has to change some things. Nope, never happens. Her hair, nobody even touches it. Nobody's hair ever gets yanked. Why was this mentioned so much at the beginning of the book? But the other thing her sister tells her is, stay away from Xaden Ryerson. He is the son of the guy who started the revolution, and our mom killed him, so he probably wants to kill you, and if he finds out you're a Sorengale, he'll want to kill you. So you know they're gonna fuck.
So here's another world-building idiocy we've now stumbled into, which is there was a rebellion, I don't know, a while before, and that's where her brother died. And the children of the rebellious lords, they were marked, right? Because all their parents were killed, but they were marked, and they were forced to become dragon riders and go through Dragon Rider Academy. Now, does it make sense to put the children of the treacherous people you murdered in positions of power where they can bond with enormously powerful dragons and essentially they can't be disciplined after that point?
It's because they might die, William.
Well, no, not just that. The idea is that the dragons can see into their mind, and the dragons are loyal. So if you are an evil separatist, the dragons will know and just kill you, and thus wouldn't bond with you. That's the theory behind it, which makes the actual thing that happens at the end completely dumb.
Yeah.
And also the fact that, like, why aren't all the dragons rebels? Like, why aren't all of them like, hey, we need to go kill those wyvern guys? Like, there's literally evil creatures out there. What the, like, why? It makes no sense. Once you do that at the end, their entire dragon society makes no sense. Why are the dragons on their end side?
It's almost like she wrote this book with the dragons as dumb dragons, and then like halfway through, it was like, you know what? Let's make them sentient, but then didn't change anything about the book to match that. Think about it. This book makes a lot more sense if the dragons aren't sentient.
Yeah, if they're just creatures.
Yep.
Yeah.
That you bond with. And it's crazy because one of our patrons mentioned in their final thoughts that the book felt like it was written by an AI in batches. And so certain batches don't fully flow into the others as well as they should. That's one of them. Anyway, plugging along, we're still on chapter 1. So she has to cross the parapet, and while she's in line to cross the parapet, and like kids die, whether it's rainy or not, like tons of kids who are applying to the dragon quadrant just die, and she's there with this guy who has been training his whole life to become a dragon rider and to do this thing, and this girl behind her named Rhiannon, and she's becoming friendly with Rhiannon, and she realizes that Rhiannon's shoes are smooth-soled, and so she makes Rhiannon switch one boot with her. So Rhiannon is in front of her. There was this other guy behind her, and then behind that guy is some dude named Jack Barlow, who is basically looking at her, because again, Violet is short, she's very pale, and she looks frail. She's not built. She's a little scrawny, and everybody else apparently looks beefy for some reason. I guess everybody was lifting weights except for our girl Violet. This one guy is like, "You look too weak to be a rider. You're probably gonna die on the parapet." And then they're like, okay, whatever. And then she sees a couple of people that have these marks on their arms, and it's the marks that are put on the kids who were the children of the the rebels. And as she's going across, like she's getting halfway across, and then she hears the guy before who was like, "You're too weak to be a rider. You'll probably die on the parapet." Just go, "I'm gonna kill you, Sorengale." This guy who she just met 2 minutes ago, who literally their entire interaction was him going, "You look too weak to be a rider, Sorengale," has now turned into a homicidal maniac. He would like to kill her. No reason. It's not
His
like
name
she
was
did.
Jack Lindbergh. Jack Barlow.
Jack Barlow. It's not like she did anything to him. It's not like he's the guy whose father her mother killed. This guy doesn't know her from a fucking bar of soap. Homicidal. So homicidal that the guy who is behind her but in front of him, he just throws off the parapet for no reason. What the fuck is happening?
Yeah, no, that was kind of wild.
Why wasn't he homicidal before that? Like, why did it take her having to be halfway across the parapet for him to be like, "I'm gonna kill you, sorry"? Like,
I think he likes to be dramatic.
No, it's bad writing on the author. She didn't give motivation for this guy.
We will never find out why he is this homicidal. This is not like a thing that will be revealed later. He's literally evil, homicidal, psychopath man from moment one. He is the most boring bludgeon of a character possible.
It's so bad. And I stopped in chapter 1 and I just put the book down and went, what is happening? Why did this guy get homicidal all of a sudden? Don't worry, this book will answer none of your questions. You're welcome. Anyway, so she gets across the parapet. Jack is coming after her. She manages to get across, and as he's finally coming across the parapet, she takes a dagger that she has on her, and she like stabs it at his groin, and she's like, "Watch yourself." And he's like, and the people,
I'm even hotter for you now.
and there's like people on the ground behind her, because technically on the parapet they can kill each other. Like Jack literally throws someone off, and there's no disciplinary action. Anything that happens on the parapet is a-okay, and because you're not cadets yet, and once you're cadets, there are some rules about interactions.
You can only kill people from other squadrons, not your own.
Yes.
It's so fucking stupid. Why are you allowed to kill anyone?
Literally, Jack, in their first training session together, will look at Violet and snap a guy's neck. And the other guy, the training guy, will be like, "Why'd you do that,
told you
dude?"
not to use lethal force.
I know, I'm like, what the fuck?
Gee Willies, Jack, why would you do that? Like,
Yeah, no, when that happened and there was literally no repercussions. I mean, even earlier on when he threw the person off the thing, I was like, I'm sorry, is he not seen as a liability considering he's not a team player and this is literally all a team effort?
yep, exactly. There's no reason he would make it across, and people would be like, yeah, you can stay. Anyway, what also happens while she's up on the parapet is she sees Xaden Ryerson.
Those don't make sense in the points.
Xaden Ryerson is the beefiest, most delicious looking man she's ever seen, but she doesn't realize at first that it's him.
His
Even
jaw was sculpted perfectly.
and his lips, if a master sculptor took days sculpting him, he spent 3 hours just on his lips. And yet she doesn't notice the giant rebel mark literally coming up to his fucking jawline. And then realizes, oh, this is Xaden Ryerson, the person my sister told me. And like, he's pissed off at her, and he's like, oh, fuck you, Soren Gale. Man. And she's like, oh, he's gonna kill me. Oh no. And then she like gets down. While she was on the parapet, she like falls and hits her knee. Once she's finally off the parapet and she's like now a cadet and she signed up, yay, her friend Dane Ados, who's been her friend since childhood, but who is he's in his second year at the academy. He's like, what are you doing here? Vi, you shouldn't be here. Oh my God, why would your mother, like, why are you here? And she's like, guess why I'm here. And he's like, oh, your mother. And he was like, listen, I will smuggle you to the scribe quarters right the fuck now.
And there's the end of the book.
No one will ever know. I will just smuggle you there right now. You can start there. And you as a reader are like, yeah, take this out, Vi. Like, why would you, like, at least take the out, and then if your mom throws you back, at least you tried. She's like, no, I'm not doing it. Because she's like, do you think I can't do it? And he's like...
But you know what's funny is that the author calls herself out on it by having Dane be like, hey, don't take this out on me. I'm just trying to help you. I'm not calling you weak. So it's funny that like that happens that's a continuous issue. And it actually is an issue. And the author's calling herself out on repeating this issue on the first existence of the issue, but then it continues going.
He's like, we need to get you out of here. And he takes her up to her room so that they can wrap her knee, because like now that she's hit it, there's a chance her kneecap's just going to completely dislocate. So they have to wrap it. And you realize now that she has had a crush on Dane. And it got mentioned before when she was talking to her sister. I forgot. While she's crossing the parapet, she makes dumps.
Oh, yeah, it's my favorite method of info dumping. The character literally recites all of the world building as a way to escape anxiety.
She literally starts reciting history, but she's like, Navarre, the country I live in, and you're like, why would you say that? And like, I would have been happier if she was like just naming royal houses, stuff that isn't like, that feels detailed.
Oh, dragon lines.
Yeah, that would have made, and because it's also the kind of thing that doesn't require thought, and you can literally remember this name to this name to this name, versus she's literally just reciting bits of history.
It makes no sense. It makes sense if you're like reciting a part of a book you read recently or something you think is relevant to now. But this is like she's literally starting at the beginning of the textbook and reading from that point forward. And it's like I could see this is something that like someone in kindergarten would do. You know what I mean? Like, America is a country that's this or that, but it makes no sense in world that she would be doing this. And so it becomes a vehicle for exposition more so than for characterization.
The idea is that she needs to distract herself so she can get across the parapet easily.
Which I'm fine with that concept in and of itself.
Exactly. And again, if she'd been going through dragon lines or something that is actually easy to memorize, or if it's stated that she has a photographic memory, but even then, like, the author saw an opportunity to info dump and she took it, where I think it could have been used more creatively.
More creatively.
I would have preferred, honestly, if she had recited one of the fables that her dad, one of the...
Then we would actually know then it would be weaved in between it from the beginning.
Because there's a book that she wants to take with her to the Dragon College that her sister won't let her take, which is a book of fables, and a couple of words get thrown at you, which are like the venin and wyvern, but nothing is explained at this point, and it's not going to, but it is integral to the actual plot of the book. So this would have been a great time for her to be like, I decided to start reciting the tale that Dad told me so much I managed to memorize it, and then we get that. Like,
and it's a comfort spot for her anyway.
And it is a comfort spot.
So that would have fit right in.
And it would have worked much better. But anyway, that's not what we get. She recites history. She has the interaction with Xaden Ryerson. She goes to see Dane. Dane wraps up her arm, and they're in his room, and he's like, listen, Vi, when you're here, this place strips away all but what is basic to you, and you're still yourself, but you're different from when you came in. And because he's like, don't do this. This is dangerous. I don't want to see you get hurt. And she's like, you think I can't do it? You think I made it across the parapet? You think? And he's like, why do you want to do this? And at this point, you're on Dane's side, like, girl, why you want to do this? You literally fell on your knee, and now your kneecap's at risk of falling off. Like, what are we doing? It's okay. Like, why? There are other options.
And outside of even the logic, it would make her an active versus a passive character. This is a character that does not do anything. She just is like, no, I'm going to keep doing this thing I don't want. It's like that thing in books where, like, people are really bad at murdering other people, like in Wrath of the Dawn, where she actually kept saying she was going to murder the prince and then was really bad. She's like, she's just a shitty assassin. And so at this point, he's like, okay, fine, we're going to wrap up your knee and we'll get you back. And then Rhiannon
and you're going to be part of my squad with your friend Rhiannon, and we're in second wing. But no, Xaden Ryerson during the assembly talks to some of the adults who all know he is the son of the man that her mother murdered, who doesn't much like the Sorengales, of which she is. And he's like, I want Sorengale squad in my wing. And the adults are like, yeah, no, that sounds about right. We're going to let that happen. Because at this point, everybody thinks Xaden wants to kill her. Everyone thinks that.
But in this world, it's I don't really, I don't understand the obsession with being okay with killing. Like, this is not a world that's barbaric enough for that. It's like, how do they even have society that runs? I noticed, obviously, the pun in Sorengale, but I did not realize the rider's son.
I am a Sorengale.
I hated it so much.
She gets across, and then she's, like, immediately terrified, because she's like, if he's my wing leader, that means he can make me do whatever he wants, and I have to listen to him, even if if another squad, like, if someone in another squad tries to kill you, that's a problem. But if someone within your own squad kills, like, you're not supposed to kill yourself. Like, within your own squads, you're not supposed to kill each other. But, like, if your superior officer tells you to do something, you have to do it. And she's like, no, he's my superior officer. Oh, to know. So then classes start. And she's going to battle brief, or, like, it's after battle brief one morning.
Question. Real quick, how old is she supposed to be?
20. She's 20.
She's 20? Okay, continue.
So a huge thing we're going to run into with this character, and I'm just going to say it now, is there are times where she talks like she's 15.
Yeah, I know. That's why I needed to pause for a sec to remember.
And then there are moments where she makes more mature, like, assumptions about things or connections, and I'm like, okay. And then she goes back to acting like she's 15, and it's just it's the opposite effect of having a character who is 15 but acts like they're 25 or 35. And then here we have a character who is older, and not that 20 is, like, 20-year-old, you're still a baby. I was a baby at 20. But it's just a little odd. But anyway, so she goes to class, but there's a point where she's with Dane, because Dane is walking her to class and, like, being very protective, and they see Ryerson. Xaden, and he's like, you can't protect her forever, Dane. And he's like, well, I'm protecting her now. And you're like, oh, this motherfucker wants to kill her. How is nobody, like, no, why are the adults letting this happen?
Why are they prioritizing Xaden
and there's
over her, the general's daughter?
Especially when we find out later that none of the adults actually like him. Like, it's really weird. But anyway, and there's literally a point where Dane's like, run, Vi! And, like, she runs to go to a place where there's a ton of people. And it's really dumb. But anyway, They have classes. She's really good at the academic stuff, but she's not good at the fighting stuff because she's never actually been trained to fight. And so her one friend Rhiannon is really good at fighting. So her and Rhiannon and this other guy decide to do like tutoring trading. She'll help them with history. They will help her with the heckin' fighting of stuff. And during her first sparring encounter, it's with a one of the marked rebel children, and it's this girl named Imogen. She's a second year. And
she has pink hair.
Yeah, there's a lot of like pink-haired, blue-haired people with side shaves. It's the book has a very, very modern aesthetic and a modern idea. Like it's basically Renaissance fair clothing. It's Fantasylandia at its bestest.
Yeah,
at its mostest.
At its mostest, and but also with the modern trappings of like colored hair and stuff like that. So again, I think this book, and tell me if you think this would have worked. I think this book would have worked better if it was just our world, but with dragons, and you could join the military for a dragon ring.
1,000%. It would make so much more sense.
I just still wouldn't like the book though that much. Like as I don't.
But I think it would fix all the world building problems.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, yeah. If you take away that aspect completely, then it's not an issue.
Here's my question: how do they have indoor plumbing?
I know!
And she refers to atoms and some other scientific concepts, but they don't have firearms. Their most advanced technology when it comes to weapons
is a
crossbow. How do you have indoor plumbing, motherfuckers? But you don't have
a
firearms. Firearms, like, what are we doing? What the fuck? You want me to believe in this world? Get the fuck out of here. I'm so angry.
Yeah, no, that I know. I like the part where it's like, oh, she points it out too at one point. I don't remember what she's saying, but she's like, and to think something in the time of indoor plumbing. And I'm like, how do they have, like, what kind of indoor plumbing? Like, are we talking like the holes you shit in and then like it goes out the side of the building? Because I could believe that. But it didn't say, yeah, the refillable ink pen that you can power with magic.
Yeah.
That was okay-ish.
Why do you need that to
Oh,
magic?
why is it even a detail, though, in general?
Yes.
But it's supposed to characterize her as a scribe, but it doesn't do anything, really, for me.
I know, but, like, just from a world-building premise, why refilling pens is not that big of a deal, guys. Also, you haven't discovered pencils?
Also a good point. And again, they have,
Or
like,
charcoal.
dragon lights. We'll get into how little the magic system makes sense. It's very X-Men-y in terms of just, like, oh, we're just going to have random powers that people can have, and we're not going to think about really how they integrate in the world except for, like, one dude.
It's funny because I read the first sex scene while my brother, his girlfriend, and Steven were watching the end of the first X-Men movie.
Are you serious? That's ironic.
I'm not joking.
That's
and
so
it was
funny.
so funny because she had just done her lightning moment, which I had also read during the end of the first X-Men movie. So like there was a point where Storm was like, "Wah!" And then she did lightning, and it was hysterical because I kept. Yeah, every time they used leverage during that sex scene, I was like, why are they using leverage? So, like, Alex, Kalia, and Steven all know how terrible. I read parts of it aloud to them. So, yeah, it was great. It was a nice bonding over bad writing. Anyway, during her first challenge, Imogen is pissed. She's like, fuck you, Sorengale, I'm gonna kill you. And you're like, great, we can add another person to the list of people who just wants to kill this bitch. But they're fighting, and Violet does not want to yield because it'll put a target on her back as a weak.
Side note, did you guys notice, is it just me, but her good friend, it starts with an R. Rhiannon. You know how when they cross the parapet and then Xaden, or before they cross the parapet or something, Xaden like is, talking to them or whatever. And then he was like, and you're with her, or he says something, and it makes it seem like he knows her.
Rhiannon,
yeah. But then it never does anything with that. I thought they were going to be siblings.
I thought they were going to just be childhood friends or something.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That was like just a dropped subplot out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that. I completely forgot, but you're right. That's exactly what
I was
happened.
expecting it to be his little sister or something. And I was like, oh, so this is how she proves to him that she's not a piece of shit like her mom. No, never happens.
No. Anyway, but Imogen basically during their fight, because she won't yield, even though 50% of all people on the first day of fighting have to yield because that's how fucking fights work. She's like, I can't yield. It'll put a target on my back. Like, half of the population is yielding violently.
I
I'm sure you'll be
know.
fine. But she pushes herself to the point where Imogen literally pulls her shoulder and dislocates and rips the ligaments of her shoulder. Like, her shoulder's just like hanging.
It like snaps.
There's a snap. It's a whole thing. And Dane is super pissed and takes her off to the infirmary. And this is the point where we meet like the head healer, who is married to a dragon rider who is a mender, who's like, Violet, oh my god, why are you in the dragon quadrant? And they're like, no, you should not be doing this. This is insane. Shall we talk to you? And then they were like, oh, it's your mother. And I'm like, does everybody know her mother's a homicide? Like, why are we letting this lady run anything?
I know. She terrible. Just sounds like she would have been so much better off anywhere else. Besides, she knows the medical people. She knows the scribe. She knows the staff everywhere. Why would she...
But the medical people also, because one of the things I want to talk about is Thea had a friend who wrote a Ella T. Holmes guest post and did an analysis of this book from the lens of toxic perseverance, which is something that people that happens in representation a lot of the time, and is just something that people with disabilities, whether it is physical, educational, chronic illness, anything, deal with, which is toxic perseverance. If you just try hard enough and if you push yourself enough, you can do it. There aren't things that are actually limiting you and making it hard for you to do that. You're just not trying hard enough. And this book is a huge giant
that's because she drops the disability altogether. She doesn't even, it's not even a part of it.
I highlighted in the last
No, there's a lot, but what I mean is she doesn't actually use it.
The whole point with the saddle, there's literally a point where somebody says, just because your body is different doesn't mean you shouldn't stay. And so it literally comes up throughout the book a
To be
ton.
fair, she continuously does fail and fall off. She never solves that issue.
There's two things. One is that she's usually able to overcome things just by working hard at them. Like, that's about 50% of how she does things, which falls into that trope, because it's like, okay, it's not a thing your body can't do. It's if you grit your teeth, you can get it done. She also likes to talk about how she's
ignore the pain.
Yeah, she's used to the pain, so she can ignore it. And it acts sort of like a weird superpower, but also I don't understand how it makes sense. She still has the baseline level of pain, so that would just be pain on top of the pain she already has. It's not like... That part never quite made sense to me. The other problem is that the author actually kind of ignores that she has this disability outside of moments of, I gotta work harder at it. So there's not shown to be chronic pain throughout the rest of her day. She's not constantly sore. She's not looking for any kind of release from this pain during normal times.
We're told that that's something she's dealt with. She mentions it as something, and her mom literally said she's dealt with more pain this morning than you've dealt with your entire life. But it never comes up.
It would have been so nice as an option if we were given that throughout the entire novel, where there are mornings where she has to, I forget what, I remember reading something that was similar to this, that did this, where it was a character that had issues with their body. I don't remember what it was, but where she has to get up extra early in the morning, so that way she can rub in some type of cream or something that helps numb things, or so, whatever it is that's gonna medicinal wise. And then towards the end, when we get towards the end, something happens where or maybe in the middle, whatever, there's an interaction where another character just beats the shit out of her or something, or stabs her, and she's just not that I'm in pain all the time, I can overcome this, but it's just she has a Hulk moment, you know what I mean? That's the secret, Cap. I'm always in pain.
It's interesting because it doesn't really permeate her being. Later on, there's a very strenuous sex scene in which she never thinks about this is actually kind of an uncomfortable angle, despite all the leverage, as Maria said, that the guy is getting. And so that's kind of the thing, and it's interesting because the author apparently also suffers from chronic pain. And so this just goes to show that, as I've said so many times on this podcast, just because you have a thing doesn't mean you're good at representing that thing. Just because you are a race or ethnicity does not mean you're good at portraying it. It does not feel like it's really part of her character. It really feels just like a Naruto, oh, I just have to fight through this to get through it kind of moment.
Ganbate, you can do this.
Exactly. It literally just feels oh, you just, oh, you just never trained. And if you just trained your muscles.
Rock Lee! all he had to do was attach million-pound
he
weights.
took off the weights, and and now he's going. No, and it's like that the whole book. Again, your body has a very specific limits, in a way that people don't seem to realize. Like, if you don't exercise regularly and you try to do something really strenuous, you will just rip a tendon, and like that's just all there is to it. You will have chronic pain. Like, that's how it works.
Also, they have weightlifting. That's like just a normal modern weightlifting.
But that's what I said. Laugh when I brought it up earlier. The freaking thigh machine. Like,
literally, like the thigh, like the thing that works your butt.
We're not going to mention it every time, but like this comes up. This is just a pattern throughout the book, and it's also kind of dumb because it's not it's. The borders of it are weird. Like, she's like, I can't wield a sword, but then she's like super good at wielding daggers.
Even though she's never trained for it, except for the past 6 months. She's great at throwing daggers. Excellent.
And her agility is off the charts, magically.
Anyway, but so back to the reason I mention this now is because when she goes to see the healers, there's literally a comment about how like she's gotten hurt enough that she has had to see a mender her entire life. Like, and menders are like, because there's like the healers, which are just like, here, let me wrap it up in a poultice and like give you a splint, and then the menders will magically fix your body. And she's gotten injured enough to the point that she's needed a mender and not a healer enough in her whole life that she knows them really well. And that on its own should tell you, like, this woman is setting up a disability that gets treated rather cavalierly, unfortunately, because I do think there are really cool things you could have done in this setting, but it doesn't actually happen. Anyway, so they go to the healer, she gets mended, and at this point, again, Dane is like, let me get you out of here. I can try to get you, like, don't let him heal you. We'll use this as an opportunity to get you out of here. And she's like, no, I can do it. My mom's just going to send me back here anyway, but you don't think I can do it. And he's like, I mean, look at you.
Also, this is going to be some bullshit later, because again, he tries to keep getting her out. And I think it's at this point, and then later he's like, okay, I have a secret plan to get you to the scholars. And then later in the book, it'll be like, oh no, he would never bend a single rule. He would never break a single rule. This is a defining trait of his character.
You know how we spoke about character assassination in the second book of Akatar?
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened to poor Dano boy, like halfway through.
No. So the thing is, the Akatar, or Akamar, I don't remember what the second. Akamath. The comparison there is actually really apt, because this book does the same thing, but it combines the two books together from the beginning, and that actually causes more problems. So where Tamlin was like a okay character who then got character assassinated, here Dane starts off as a character who's half assassinated. Like, the thing about Dane is that you can tell from the beginning he has some toxic tendencies, but also like the author clearly is biased against him, weirdly enough, and so you kind of feel like the author is you both don't like Dane, but also feel like the author is being unfair to him at the same time. Again, those two arcs are just smushed together. And then with Xaden is like Rysand. He does the Rysand in book 2 thing of, I'm a feminist, I let you do active things and have agency and don't try to protect you overly, but at the same time I'm still really possessive and try to protect you a lot. Also, I will do things that violate your physical autonomy and your personal space and agency, but I do them because I am protecting you, and the narrative will validate that. Except in Akatar, she wrote him as a bad person in book 1, and then in book 2 tried to retcon the things he did as okay. In this one, it's the same book. It's at the same time she's retconning the things he does.
As it happens. They finish off with the healers.
Oh my god, we gotta fast forward.
I know.
A lot doesn't happen in this book, though, is the thing.
Basically, she goes to class. She becomes like really well known for the academic stuff. She trains up. She's getting training with her friend Rhiannon. The next major thing that happens is this thing called the gauntlet. And basically, her squad has kind of developed friendships. There is this one guy in her squad named Oren, who's like kind of okay with her, but kind of looks down upon her because she has a good relationship with Dane, who's their squad leader. But he's also become friends with Jack Barlow, which is that guy that wants to kill her. And so like there's a bunch of like murder, like vague murder attempts that happen to her. But she gets a book from her sister that basically has like clues. It was from her older brother that has clues of like how to do stuff well in the academy. And one of them is they have a place where they keep all the challenges for the week, and you can go see who you're going to have to fight, and then you can work against them. And so basically our girl, who the only book she brought with her conveniently was a book on poisoning. because she knew that she was,
But she did it on purpose.
yes,
Like, that
yeah,
makes sense.
She was going to play to her strengths, and her strengths are not the physicality kind. And so she brought a book on poisoning, and she basically uses the information from her brother's book to go find out who her challenges are, and then she gets kitchen duty, and she just keeps poisoning everyone she fights. Everyone she fights either gets a headache, gets sick, gets a stomachache, like everyone. And nobody's like, wow, it's really weird that
Maria,
everyone
what makes
she
you think
fights-
they would give a fuck when there's other people murdering other people? There's just not even any, like, baseline for this to matter.
But it's insane that because here's the thing, everybody expects her to lose. So even if you're just another student who's around, you'd be like, why does she keep winning? Why does everyone, like, Xaden should not be the only one who is like, wow, everyone she fights falls down sick. Crazy, the day she fights them. Actually, sometimes halfway through the battle she's fighting them in. Wow, something must be, nobody notices. She gets away with this. But one day while she's out in the forest getting some berries to poison people with, she sees Xaden Ryers.
And all the other rebels' children meeting up in a secret meeting.
Because they're not allowed to, there's a law that states that there's not allowed to be a gathering of more than just 3 rebel children at the same time. And she's in this tree, and there's like 8 of them just under the tree, and she's like, oh my god, are they plotting heresy? And so she like scooches herself down the tree.
And then she's like, nah, it's just a club meeting, and they're just like, it's like a therapy group.
It's like a support group.
It's a PTSD support group.
They're people all from the exact same region, which is up on the border of the their nation, and they're all from the same area, and they're all like people who grew up together, and they're basically like, you know, he's a 3rd year, and some of his other 3rd years are like, how can we help? What do you need help with? And it's just like a support group.
She was picking the berries from the tree, or whatever it is that she was getting for the poison, she was getting from high in the tree.
Yeah, that's exactly what was happening.
So, and the thing is, at one point, one of the younger kids was like, I don't know if I can do this. I can't do this. And I gotta not do this, or have to go away or something. And Xaden is like, I have no use for you. It's only people who fight. Tough. I'm ruthless, which is then going to go completely against his personality later in the book, but whatever.
Also, side note, like, unless they're really, like, I don't know if they're keeping track. It's because it doesn't really say if they're keeping track of all the rebels, like, that they're in there. But couldn't he just, like, have squirreled him, like, faked to death and then squirreled him away to the Griffin Riders? Like, oh, spoiler. But, like, you know, couldn't he have just gone off to another village?
Point.
Yeah, they literally could have just tried.
Like, he could be smuggling the kids out through that, and that's actually why he has, not for some fucking, I mean, maybe weapon stuff too, but why isn't he just ferreting away and then all the higher ups are like, yes, all the rebel kids are dying, perfect, just according to plan. And meanwhile, Xaden's like actually rescuing everyone piece by piece.
No, that's not what happens.
That's not
great
grimdark.
idea, Katie. Wow, it's like you had a good idea. Missing from this book regularly. Anyway, continuing. So she talks to Xaden, and she's like, "Are you gonna kill me?" And he was like, "Are you going to tell about what you saw?" And she was like, "Nah, it looked like you guys were just helping each other. There's nothing. Like, I mean, yes, is this meeting illegal? Yeah, but nothing you were doing was bad, so nah, you're fine." And he was like, "Well, then I guess I owe you a favor." And she's like, "You're not gonna kill me?" And he's like, "I'll deal with you in my own time." And you're like, he's obviously not going to kill her. This would have been the perfect time. Nobody would have ever, they would have found her. He could have made it look like she fell out of the tree and died. So immediately, any tension about this guy wanting to kill her, and this is in the first third of the book, baby, gone. Tension? What tension? What tension?
2 points. First of all, shadows are so OP in fiction. His ability, by the way, his magical ability is he can control shadows. What does a shadow do in real life? Maria, Katie, name something a shadow can do in real life.
Provide shade from the sun.
Yeah. Oh, you mean it can't listen? It can't move things? It can't create blades? What is this bullshit in fiction where shadows can just do anything? OP, they get too good of press. We need to bring shadows back down to size.
I'm just okay if it can create darkness and you can blind people, especially if you could do isolated where you can just have an entire person's head, like just their head, or like their dragon that they're riding, just cover their head in darkness. Done. That's all you need. That's the only thing that power needs to do. Everything else is unnecessary and dumb.
The other thing to talk about is that at this point, they're very in their like UST. He's sneering, but also he's like, he's the kind of bitchy boy I hate more than anything in the entire world. Where it's like, it's not just that they have like banter. It's like he's banter where like he makes her blush, and he's like, oh, like he's control. It's almost like a seductive manipulativeness that is supposed to be attractive. I don't quite know how to explain it, but there's a very specific type of female wish fulfillment in their character, in the male protagonist, that I really hate. And the thing about it is it defangs him really quickly. Like Maria said, there is no tension really, because we know he's just doing this because he's all about her as a character. He doesn't have his own things he's doing, and they're just clashing because of their personalities. He is actively like kind of trying to seduce her almost.
And like is protective of her. So
also, look, guys, we have to count our blessings that we didn't get the cut.
The Thousand Chittering Birds. That's the one I was thinking of from Shadow and Bone.
They part ways, and there's a point where like her sparring person for the week is not like doesn't come like something happened, and that person they get sick too soon. Like she poisoned them and it hit too soon, so she no longer has anyone to challenge, and Zayden's like, oh, I'll fill in this week. And the guy who's in charge knows Zayden is like the just really good student, and is like, yeah, that's fine. And everybody's like, no, he's gonna kill you. And she's like, oh no. And like it is he is wiping the floor with her, and she's like, but his pecs, oh my god, look at his chiseled chest, I'm dying. You're like, madam, focus up. Maybe if you could get your head out of your clit for a second.
Oh, Jesus, fuck. Please don't say that again.
But during the scene, there's a point where she like goes to stab him somewhere, and he's like, why are you doing that? There's a lot of better places for you to hit me. And he basically says, like, you could get my kidney from this angle. Oh god, this was where it is. He goes, a hit to the kidney would have fit really well in this position. And she's like, I had to keep myself from thinking what else would have fit really well in this position. I was like, why? Why is this happening?
And that's why I say this is a bodice ripper, okay? Like, this is not highbrow.
No, bodice rippers aren't 20 hours long.
The big things that are coming up is the gauntlet and then threshing. The gauntlet is a bunch of tasks that are supposed to simulate things you're going to deal with as a dragon rider.
Ninja Warrior. It's American Ninja Warrior.
And depending on how fast your squad finishes that is the order in which you get presented to the dragons for presentation day. Presentation day is when there's just all the dragons who are willing to have a bond with a human.
Are like, let me look at the selection this year.
Yes, let's see what the options are. And you just walk in front of the dragons. If the dragons don't like you or think you're an asshole,
they'll just
burn you to death right then and there.
This already happened. When they first got there, the dragons flew down to be in front of them, and one of the kids ran screaming, and the dragons burned them. Dragons can just murder people, and it's treated as fine. The way the dragons work in this book is bizarre. Also, though, Lindbergh said, and I think this is a really good point, knife to the throat is hot because, like, imagine his knife is his cock.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine if somebody stuck their dick, like, right like this. I mean, literally on your neck, like this, like a knife.
Or just the tip. Just the tip. Yeah.
Just right there.
Thanks, I hate it. I'm fine. This is fine. Anyway, she has to get through the gauntlet, but oh no, she's too small. This happens before the scene where her and Zayden fight. She's too. There's literally a portion of it that she's too short. Like she manages to get through all the rest of it. But there's one part that she just cannot get past because she needs to be longer to be able to climb up this thing. And when she has that fight with Zayden, and he's like, you're thinking about things the correct way. You need to, there are other ways to get through something outside of the textbook way. And she was like, I shall use that to deal with. And so it's presentation day. She's still never gotten past the entire gauntlet. But she's like, I'm going to use the advice he gave me and be creative about this. And she manages to use a rope to go up the thing. And I'm like, you didn't think of that before, asshole? You're supposed to be smart. Like, what the heck? And then there's this other thing that she has to get up, and she uses her knife to climb her way up.
Long story short, she's successful.
She's successful.
The problem with this is, first of all, this kind of goes into, this may seem like it's not part of that toxic perseverance trope because she finds another way of doing it, but it is, because it's basically like she worked really hard and found there's no hard limits to what her body can do, and there's no respect for maybe she needs to take another route to do it, not just in the short term, but in the long term. Like, so later well, the whole dragon saddle thing will come up. But, like, in general, there's no understanding that, like, maybe your body can't do something if you can't either grit your teeth through it or think of some kind of weird physics thing that really should have just actually done you more damage because your ligaments and bone and joints are weak, supposedly, but you still swing yourself up with a dagger.
Like, there's only one thing in the entire book that she continuously doesn't do well, and they have to give her an accommodation for that is within the rules of the school, and it really fits into the whole toxic perseverance thing, and it's really like, and she is made responsible for her own accommodations in a lot of it. It is not something that, like, it's only halfway through the book that Xaden starts getting, like, super involved with her stuff.
There's also no commentary. She doesn't think about how, like, hey, this system is kind of fucked up, they should be giving me more accommodations, or maybe, like, I shouldn't have done this. It's always treated as, like, when Dane is like, you know, you're gonna have a lot of trouble doing this, like, this may not be the best choice. It's like, oh, he's coddling me.
He doesn't think I can do it.
Yeah, again, and that's the thing. He doesn't think I can do it. That's part of that toxic perseverance concept.
It's funny, I saw a video about disability where somebody was talking, like, it was a meme or a reel on in Instagram or TikTok, but I saw it on Instagram, and it was basically that you're either not disabled enough, where, like, people will be like, oh, you didn't seem disabled, like, oh, you seem like, and then, like, you talk about all the things, and then when you talk about, like, the things you want accommodations for or things, and they're like, oh, no, you're not disabled enough to need, why should I make allowances or exceptions for you? And it's something that this book really kind of feeds into with that, and this part of it is not so, there's a lot that's not great. It's a symptom. It's a symptom of a greater problem. But anyway, so she gets through presentation. Only one guy gets burned. During presentation, there is a tiny, tiny little dragon that's called a feathertail. And feathertails are known, they're super rare. People rarely ever see them outside of the Vale, which is the secret dragon place that only dragons go to.
For some reason, Jack Barlow is like, yeah, it looks sweet. Let's kill it.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, let's go kill, like, this dragon amongst other dragons, and I'll definitely be picked by another dragon.
And we're not even at that point. We're just at the point where, like, that one annoying girl who's, like, super annoying in the first third of the book
when you mean
gets
she was
killed.
burned?
Yeah. Because she's like, wow, what a weird dragon. All these dragons, like, and
that was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed her dying. I didn't like her. There was a lot of people I wish would have just died by dragonfire, but it's fine. Anyway, so during the presentation, she sees this tiny gold dragon, and everybody's talking crap about it, but they make it through. The majority of them make it through presentation just fine. They're getting ready to go to the threshing, which is October 1st. Here's another point. Why are they using a flipping
Gregorian calendar?
Why do they have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Like, why are they using our just put it in our world. Just make our world a world that has military dragons. Just make the dragons part of the military. And
I see what you're getting at with that comment now. Yeah.
Like, just do it. You could have everything else, just maybe not the magic part. And the book can be the same, I promise.
You mean Temeraire, but, like, modern?
Yes. October 1st comes, and it is threshing day. And during threshing day, she's out and about, and she sees the tiny, like, she's just looking for dragons. And basically what it is if you feel a pull, you should follow it. It'll lead you to a dragon, or you just stumbled upon a dragon and you hope they either bond with you or don't kill you. And she's managed to make it through, and they basically just throw you into an arena. Like
Zahalo. Jake. Zahalo, Jake.
Make the bond, Jake. And that's basically what's happening. They throw you into, like, a dragon-infested area, and, like, good luck. And this is a time where if you have a vendetta against another student, anything that happens during threshing is, like, considered okay. Nobody's going to get in trouble for it. Again,
nobody's gotten in trouble for anything so far.
But also, like, why would you let because here's the thing. If you're military, you want the most kids to come out of this bonded to dragons. That's the goal here. That you need this for your defenses. So you want to heighten your chances. Letting people kill other people on threshing day makes zero sense. Also, older writers and people at the school cannot help. They're not allowed to. They can observe, but they cannot step in. Anyway, there's a point where she's kind of going through, hoping like to not die or bond, whatever happens. And she hears Jack fucking Barlow and then two guys from her squad that she knows, one of which is that Oren dude I mentioned. And they're like, we have to kill that little dragon
because we don't like it.
If it bonds with someone, it will be, because there's this huge thing about being the weakest link in the wing,
but that doesn't make any sense.
Being a risk to the wing as a whole, and so you just have to get rid of the weakest link. And they're like, this dragon is the weakest link, and even though from what they understand, the dragons in this world, the Feathertails never bond at anyone.
So it doesn't matter. They just want to go kill something.
Exactly. And so they're the logic she is giving them, which is they're doing this to keep it from bonding with someone and making it a weak, because this dragon is too small for anyone to ride it, which means it's like smaller than a horse, which makes no sense given the scale of the other dragons. Like, what do you mean it's smaller than a horse? Like, a horse can ride, it can have people on it, but anyway, this one's too small. And so the fact that Feathertails never bond anyone means that these guys worry, and this is what I mean where this author is not putting a lot of thought into the internal logic. Because Oren and the other character are shown to be semi-reasonable. Jack Barlow is obviously a homicidal maniac, but the other ones have been reasonable at other points, which means that they should either be saying they don't ever bond with anyone, or that these characters in this moment legitimately think this is good reasoning, which means the author thinks in that moment it is a good enough reason to give her villains to do. And it just isn't. It's very weak. But anyway, so they're going to go kill the little gold dragon, and she's like, oh, they're heading into the direction of the clearing where I saw the little gold dragon. She's like, I can't let them do this. And she like races into the clearing, and she's like, run, gold dragon, get out of here. Yeah, fly. And the gold dragon's like,
okay, bruh.
Just not doing nothing. And then the guys come in and they go into like a flanking formation, and they're like, 2 for 1 weakest link. Let's go. And she's like, fly, dragon. And she takes out her daggers and she's like ready to go. And she like throws the daggers at one person, but she always goes for non-lethal shots. They end up having like a fight. And then all of a sudden there is Xaden and his giant blue dagger tail dragon named Sigale. And Sigale is like the baddest of the bad.
Congratulations, you gave the most high-profile son of a traitor the most powerful dragon. Good job. This is how you oppress.
Sigale and Xaden, and Xaden's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you guys. I would not try to kill that dragon. And then they were like, you can't do anything, Ryerson. It's against the rules. And then he was like, I don't have to do anything, but she's not bound by our rules. So immediately, in that moment, those guys should have just fucking run.
Yeah.
They should have fucking run. No, they continue trying to fight her. And there's a point... There's a point at which Xaden takes a step forward as if he's going to step in, but then descending from the sky is a giant black dragon. Earlier in history in Dragonkind class, they gave a lesson about the baddest dragon unbonded currently. It is a black dragon with a mace tail.
And also, it's tragic because its rider had died during the rebellion thing, and dragons, like, they get traumatized when the riders die, and they don't like to rebond. And so it's a super special dragon.
Yeah, because he was not going to ever rebond, nobody thought. So, like, they didn't even think he was on the table for bonding. But all of a sudden, out of the sky comes the big black badass dragon, and he, like, puts himself around the little baby gold dragon and is like, fuck y'all. And then immediately just start talking to our girl Violet's head. And you're like, she just got the baddest dragon. Like, she heroed her way into, like, defending this little dragon that this big dragon obviously liked. Okay. And so they're bonded, and she's like, oh my god. And then the dragon, like, decimates some shit, and Oren is, like, passed out beneath her, and he's like, you should kill her, Silver One. And she's like, why are you calling? She has silver in her hair. Remember, guys, I mentioned that she has silver in her hair earlier. He's gonna call her Silver One forever. Just be prepared. And he's like, you should kill her. Or kill him. And then she's like, no, I won't do that. Hopefully that we can move past this and everything. And he's like, okay, well, let's see how it goes. And then he was like, get on my back. She has trouble. And one of the things you learn, and it's one of the justifications this book has for not having people in saddles, which is the dragons do not like assisting their riders. We are never shown a single dragon that once bonded is cruel or mean to their rider. They are all loving and doting.
Yeah, like, what the hell was up with that?
But no, our big black big bad black dragon, he is especially accommodating because he knows she can't get up on him by himself. So he puts a foreleg out so she can climb up. But
I got
other
the vibe that it
dragons-
was supposed to be like he was so old and wizened or something, but it didn't, like, because he's like, "Oh, I'm over a hunt or something." I don't know. He throws his age around.
Yeah,
and
he's middle-aged.
and that's what I thought at first. I was like, oh, he's just older, so maybe he's like more mature or something. But no. Like, well, we don't even get any other dragons.
No.
Literally, there are no other dragons
but
besides.
there are other points. Remember, there's that point where that one girl is going to get killed and her dragon tries to protect her.
Oh yeah.
So everything we see of dragons and their riders is the dragons being protective and possessive. Why would they not want to make things easier for their riders? But no, the book tells us that dragons only want strong, resourceful riders. They will not lower themselves.
Like they're very noble, like
Yes.
overly like arrogant creatures,
They
but
will
then
not.
it never like is that's a great point.
Yep.
I didn't even think about that.
I did. They will not debase themselves for anyone.
Let's talk about problems with dragons part 1 in this book. So the way that the dragons are portrayed is incredibly stupid. First of all, you only are allowed to talk to dragons who you have a mind bond with, and nobody else is really allowed to talk about their dragons with anyone. So there are just these sentient war beasts that everybody has a personal relationship to, but isn't really part of the rest. They don't communicate or interact with the rest of the military or the other dragon writers. So this is basically the author's way of not having to write them. And so the thing about it is, it's never explained why these sentient dragons allow themselves to be ridden.
Yeah, somebody literally just said, why don't the dragons enslave humanity?
Not once is it explained why they do this. They also have their own society with their own things going on that they don't want the humans to know about. Never explained why they allow the humans to do this. Also, humans get really powerful magic from bonding with a dragon. Why do the dragons allow this? That's a really good question.
So there is one line it's a giveaway line, and it's the same complaint I made, in Dune when I made the comment that like him deciding he wanted to be emperor is made in that one throwaway line in that one scene and then not brought it up again until the end, and because you were like, well, it is mentioned, and I was like, not enough for it to stick around.
He has a whole scene where he plots to be I was gonna say emperor, but go ahead.
There is a line where it says that the reasons the dragons do this is they're trying to protect the veil, which is a sacred space for them. They cannot channel, they can't get the magic power thingies themselves, and they cannot use the magic themselves. So to be able to be a defensive offensive force with magic, they have to bond with humans to get this access to that side of the powers. And it's a throwaway line. Listen, it is an explanation for this, but it is a throwaway line that never comes up again. It's not like the dragons are like, yes, we cannot do anything on our own, and thus we need you. Like,
so that actually makes it dumber, because why wouldn't the dragons think of their humans then as sort of like they're like a gun that they get to control? Why aren't they a part of the government there? Like, it's never really treated like the dragons. Again, it would make so much more sense if the dragons were like, awesome, I now have a magical turret on me. You have to do what I say, though, because I'm larger than you and all of your power comes from me. There's no reason that the dragons wouldn't be dominant in this.
That is how it's sold to us. It is sold to us that the dragons are a dominant creature, but all of our interactions with dragons are dragons that are emotionally invested in their riders, that care deeply about their riders, and, like I said, protective and possessive. That does not work with everything else we've been told about the dragons. And the dragon, once you bond with the dragon, they get to tell you their name, their full name, that only you know, and his is Ternanoch.
Which is a badass dragon name, I'm not gonna lie.
It is, but and he says you can call me Taryn, and that's what everybody else around them gets to know him as. But anyway, he was like, get on my back, and she like has a hard time getting on and staying on, and he's like, oh, you can't keep your seat. So he uses some of his, because he does have access to like some magic, he uses some of his magic just to hold her into her seat, and they fly back to like, she falls because she's like, no, don't do that, and he's like, okay, and she falls, but he catches her. They go to the place where all the people who got dragons, and like she shows up on the biggest of the bad, and they're like, holy shit, Violet, you got, and her mom's there, and her mom is absolutely not
nothing happens with her mother.
If her mom had really just wanted, like, if her mom really was like, I know you can be a good dragon rider, like, you're a Soren Gale, I know you can do this would be her for a moment to be like, see, I was right, you got the baddest. But no,
her mom doesn't even care. She's just continuously disappointed.
Again, madam, if you wanted to kill your daughter, just kill your daughter. I guarantee you could have gotten away with it. I promise. Anyway, continuing. But when they get there and she goes up to give the name, because you have to give your name and your dragon's name to the person who keeps all that stuff. And she's like, I'm Violet Sorengale and my dragon is Ternanoch. And then there's a voice in her ear and was like, and me. What's her?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. The little golden dragon.
The Feathertail.
Amarna, I think was it. Anyway, so basically the little tiny gold feathertail is like, I'm bonded with her too. And she's like, I have 2 dragons. And like it causes this whole uproar, or the humans are like, no, you can't have 2 dragons. That's too many dragons for one person. And then the dragons themselves, because like, again, humans can't actually control what dragons do or don't do. And Donna. And so the Dragon Council meets and basically was like, nah, she can have 2 dragons. If the dragons want to do it, we don't care. And so she gets to bond 2 dragons. Here's my problem. I would have preferred if she had just bonded with Andarna.
Yes.
Like, and that had just been, and it was a small dragon who eventually, like, she is able to ride. Like, I would have made Andarna a little bit bigger, made it so she can ride her, but it's not a combat dragon. This dragon is not, but can be used maybe for reconnaissance or other ways. Like we're not.
That's what I thought. That was where it was going.
Yes, and that you were going to, like, she was going to make her own path within the Riders Quadrant that suited her and her dragon's abilities. No, she gets 2 dragons, and it's just so OP and so, like, you are such a special Mary Sue.
It's so completely, people overuse that term. It is such a Mary Sue moment that not only does she get the baddest bad tragic dragon, but also the special magical dragon. And also, I need to point out that Andarna is really dumb because she's really innocent throughout everything. And like, I would have liked it so much more if she was just like innocently savage. Like, why can't I flame those people? Like, I don't get it. I want to fight like a Scarecrow when she's young, Maria.
No, that would have been great. I would have loved that.
And then it's a story about how Violence is teaching Andarna about humanity, and then Andarna is teaching Violet about violence. So
or just even the 2 of them just finding their own way within their limitations, but being as resourcely and use, like, there's
I would have preferred
Andarna
not to be a child either.
Yes.
I would have preferred her to be like youthful maybe or undergrown.
Spoiler alert, what we eventually find out is that Andarna is actually, all Feathertails are just juvenile dragons, and they're usually not allowed to go and bond, but for some reason she did. And also, because of that, her magic is like, that what's her face can channel, violence can channel, is like completely anything can happen with it. They stop time at 1 point or 2 points, I think, with it. And so it's like, it's even more magical and OP.
And they don't just channel. So I'm going to explain this really quick. So first off, I have to explain the reason we keep saying violence is because Xaden starts calling Violet Violence,
So stupid.
which is the dumbest nickname. Thanks, I hate it.
It's fine, whatever.
I hate it. It's so dumb because she's not actually that violent. Like,
it's tongue in cheek, whatever.
But he means it seriously. He's like, you're much more like my nickname. Like, anyway,
yeah, I know.
Continuing. But the whole thing about, so initially it's just a big deal because number 1, a Feathertail has never bonded anyone, but number 2, nobody has ever had 2 dragons at the same time. What you learn, though, like we said, the Feathertails are baby dragons who have not yet developed, because they categorize dragons by their tails. As well as color for personality and stuff. But the way the dragons work is that you can channel magic through them. And now the majority of the magic you can do through channeling is like, I can unlock a door, I can throw up a ward, I can put up a small shield, I can I can make some mage lights, that kind of stuff, like that practical magic, we'll call it. But through channeling from your dragon, you develop a power that is unique to you. It is powered by your dragon's magic, but it is dependent on the person. So just because, so for instance, Taryn's previous writer was able to, he was able to put power into other people or take power. Like, he was a siphoner. But that doesn't mean that she's going to have the same powers. And it is literally, you're not going to have the same powers as someone else. It depends on who you are as a person. So for instance, Dane can touch people and then see their recent memories. We already talked about old Xaden and his shadow magic abilities.
The cut.
And so your power that you get from your dragon is dependent on you. And now what you learn about the feather tails, the bebe dragons, is they can just give you, when you're a baby dragon, you get extra powers that you lose when you're older, that are specific controllable powers. So again, like we mentioned, the other dragons, they can do, like, they have magical energy magic, and they can, like, spit fire and stuff, but they can't, like, control shadows, do that other stuff. Their humans do that. But as babies, they have extra. So Andarna's power is she can stop time for periods of time. And the way it works with the baby dragons is, once bonded, she can just give her power to Violet, and Violet is like getting that power through Andarna. So it's not the same method, but it also means you can drain the dragon, because she's literally taking the power from the dragon. And so if the rest of the military knew, they would go find Feathertails and drain them for their benefit. And so they're like, shh, don't tell anyone.
But then they just die.
Yeah. But anyway, listen, that's... So, but we don't learn that right now. She bonds with the two dragons. Everybody's like, okay, you get to have two dragons. She starts flight training with Taryn. She has a really hard time staying on her dragon. And then this thing happens where Xaden suddenly gets really involved in her life. Why, do you ask? Because Xaden's dragon is mated to Ternanoth.
Yes.
And the mating bond is even stronger than the like rider dragon bond, which is already pretty strong. And so, like, these two, they can't go a couple of days without being around each other, which means she is going to be around Xaden forever. They're going to have to get stationed in the same places when they're older. It also means if she dies and it kills Taryn, then it will kill Xaden's dragon, and then he'll die. Because here's a rule we haven't mentioned. A rider without a dragon will die. You're just dead. A dragon, if their rider dies,
It's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy, and sometimes they do die out of sadness if it's strong enough of a bond, but they can survive without it. And so Xaden is like, yeah, no, your life is now tied to mine, and also everybody's going to want to try kill you, because now that they know that Taryn is willing to bond, they're going to want to kill you to try bond with Taryn. And you're like, why? He obviously picked her for unconventional reasons. Why would anybody be like, yes, he'll just pick me if I kill her instead? Like, it makes no sense. But anyway, he's like, everybody's going to be coming after you. Which is what happens. There's a point where people try to assassinate her in her bed, and
Xaden comes on his white steed,
but this is
or
also
his black steed.
This is also where we learn about Andarna's power, because there's a point where, like, Xaden's not going to get there in time, and she is, like, super going to die, and Andarna's like, use my power, and she stops time, and it drains the crap out of Andarna. She's really tired afterwards, but this is where she learns about Andarna's power. But Taryn had seen that she was going to get killed, told Xaden's dragon sent Xaden. And so basically you are immediately like, oh, their dragons are in love, they're going to be in love, and they're just going to be around. Like, it's just, God, there's zero fucking tension.
This is also where the whole, like, her mentioning how hot he is goes into...
starts being part of every page.
Yes.
It's pervasive and disgusting.
It was bad from before, but it just gets so much worse because he's around more.
I do like that he smokes pot at one point, basically.
Because it helps. We're gonna get
when
there.
they're having passionate dragon sex.
So one of the things we learned is that when the dragons have sex, if they're not careful about blocking out their riders, then you can feel them.
What exactly
sex.
do you feel? Like, you know, like I'm wondering what that's like.
Lust, and so she like is feeling this, and so a couple of things happen when she gets her dragon. Number one, this guy named Liam, who is the best first year in their class, gets assigned to her as a bodyguard by Xaden. One of Xaden's friend, Imogen, the girl who
pink haired and
fucked up her shoulder earlier, is assigned to her to have her do weights with her legs to help her stay on. Because here's a fun fact, guys. Nobody has saddles. Literally, from getting bonded to getting presented as a bonded pair, somebody falls off their dragon and dies. As a military, all you want is for people to bond dragons, right? So you can throw them into battles, right? Why would you not make it so that
it's the winnowing? It's the survival of the fittest.
Once they're in battle, they're bonded to their dragon. Their dragon tends to get weird if they die and isn't going to necessarily stay in. Why would you not make sure that they stay on top of their dragon?
In Temeraire, it's so, like, such a thing that, like, the captains who are bonded with the dragons are not allowed to duel. Even though everybody else in society can duel, you're not allowed to duel because God forbid you die and then your dragon no longer wants to fight for us. Like,
and not to mention to lose a valuable source of labor.
Exactly.
Well, and magic. You don't necessarily know that you're going to be able to get that magical ability back specifically. And that is one of the things that we'll get back to the saddle thing in a second. But that is one of the things that this book does so poorly, is actually have the dragon-human relationship in it. It doesn't happen till about halfway. And then once it's there, Ternanok is not really a real character. He's just kind of a grumpy voice that talks to her sometimes. There's no bond.
They don't go through a trial.
They don't go for a swim together.
There's no, like, them bonding together, and there's nothing told through the relationship. So there's two series that do dragon writers really well. One is the Temeraire series.
Temeraire. Lawrence regularly would just go sleep with Temeraire, then sleep in his
bed. Oh my
beds.
God, I loved that book so much. It's too bad I wasn't part of that one because I didn't finish it.
His relationship with Temeraire challenges how he sees the world. Temeraire is an active character who has to grow through the world. There's a lot of world building that goes into their relationship, but the relationship is also used in ways to characterize them and to talk about deeper themes of, like, agency and depression and things like that. Game of Thrones, another version that the dragons in there are feral, or A Song of Ice and Fire, excuse me. The dragons in there are feral, but they're very symbolic for the character of, you know, she thinks about how, like, they're a force of destruction, and, like, she's trying to build a city up, but it would be so much easier just to burn everything with dragon fire. And it's her relationship to violence. Like, that's what the book is trying to talk about. And even in terms of, like, dynastically, like, Westeros is too big of a continent to be ruled by one house if they don't have dragons, which is, like, now why they're in such a dysfunctional state. Those are reasons to include dragons in your work and do something with them. In this case, it genuinely feels like the dragons weren't sentient, and then later she was like, yeah, okay, let's make them sentient and talk. And it doesn't make any sense.
You don't really feel like her and the dragons bond. There's no real, like, them, like, there's never a point where, like, you get a lot of feelings from, like, either direction, or that they do, like Katie said, just going for a swim together and, like, doing stuff, or like she starts finding she wants to spend more time with her dragon instead of
than
Rhiannon.
people. Like, that's what this book should have been about. But, like, in the Temeraire series, one of my favorite scenes that made me so endeared was how Lawrence, or whatever, was that his name?
Yeah. Lawrence. Yes.
Lawrence.
William Lawrence.
Like, had to take care of the baby dragon. Like, you know, he had to figure out how to feed it, how to do all this, and then he became parental in that role. And then later on, when they go and Lawrence is in a really awkward emotional situation with his family, Temeraire's outside, and he goes to Temeraire, and it's like this welcoming, it's like, my new family, like, you're my family. And it's like,
continue. I was just fixing the focus.
And, like, it really felt real. But none of this book feels real, so that doesn't...
Well, I'm going to contrast this lack of relationship with the dragon with the overdrive relationship with Xaden in a minute. But going back to saddles, because this is the important...
Like, immediately somebody just falls off their dragon back, and this is going to happen multiple times. And what you discover is nobody is, like... I had taken it as an assumption that, like, yeah, you needed to be strong, but that there was obviously going to be some sort of saddle mechanism.
Well, yeah, no shit.
There isn't. The dragons, you just sit at the base of their neck,
and you hope.
And you hold on to, like, a bone spur that they call the pommel bone. And you just hold on.
That seems really dumb.
And it seems really dumb because if you go upside down, like, that's not just, like, your legs can't, it just, oh my God, I can't, like,
how are you supposed to be able to focus on, like, fighting in flight if you're too worried about falling off?
Exactly. And also, just, like, nobody's thighs are that strong. And also, I imagine a dragon neck is really wide.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're probably, like, knees bent, and you're not, like, because with a horse, you, like, clamp onto the sides of them, and your thighs need to be strong. But the horse is never going upside down, you know, or flying sideways, and you're going to fall off. So this idea that anyone can just stay on dragonback by sheer force of their muscular power is fucking bizarre.
The thing about it is not an organic outgrowth of the world. It is a thing the author put in because she wanted to have a character do a thing. And that's the problem. It's author fiat.
She could have had saddles and just had it that Violet couldn't stay in her saddle, and therefore she had to tie herself into the saddle. That's it. There you go. That's the problem, but with more logic.
Or like maybe she just need different kinds of ties. Like maybe everybody else is just hooked in around the waist and they just have the one thing, but they have some mobility, and she needs to just be strapped in by the legs. And so like there is a difference, but like no, nobody's wearing a saddle. And there's literally a point where like in a battle somebody just falls off their fucking dragon, and I'm like, wow, that could have been fucking solved. But anyway, so Imogen is making her strength train, and the
Cute
whole nine
character
yards.
development, I guess, montage.
There's that whole scene where the dragons are having sex. She then wants to have sex because their emotions are coming into her.
She learns how to block emotions through Xaden in that moment.
And then they end up kissing, and then like
he's like, "No, no, I can't.
Mistake.
This is a mistake.
Or you don't actually want this. This is just the dragon's emotion.
Don't fall for me."
This isn't even where he says that. Like it's so dumb.
Which is such a fucking stupid ass thing to say.
But anyway, then he starts avoiding her for a couple of weeks, and then like they end up having it out about her avoiding him, and then he ends up like taking more of a role in her learning. There's a whole thing about the squad battle, and like at this point, like once they have the dragons, all the school stuff makes no sense.
Yeah,
There's
it doesn't matter
where, as
at all.
a squad, they have to do like a relay thing to do a like whoever the best squad is.
You also start realizing like, why did they spend all this time on like grappling? Like, what do any of these skills have to do with being a dragon? It's not like they were learning like trajectories or arithmetic or geometry, which you would actually need to know.
Wind speed.
Like a sniper has to know a lot of math to know like the rotation of the earth, so that over a certain distance the bullet will, like, that's a thing you would need to know as a dragon rider or a pilot, or even just the prerequisites to being able to wield power, much more so than like getting in fights.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be off your dragon. Like ideally, if you are in a like aerial battle, if you're off your dragon, you're fucked. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. But anyway,
yeah, why weren't they learning how to do, like, why don't they have
this author is not actually
I know.
Care.
I know.
There was a point when we were watching the movie last night,
X-Men,
the first X-Men, and my brother was like, but why isn't this doing this? I said, Alex, because they don't give a shit. They don't actually care about making it work. You're asking for logic where there is none. And that is what this book is. You're asking for logic where there isn't an inherent logic to it. Because again, in a world where dragon riders are supposed to be coveted and are an important asset, you do not let them falling off their dragon destroy a bonded pair. Listen, I'm okay if you're like, before being bonded, they're useless. But after being bonded, they should be incredibly valuable as a resource. Anyway, there's this whole dumb stuff that they're doing. Like they have to go, they end up stealing her mom's map off the wall, and she finds like a dagger with a rune on it.
And then they have this one part where they go off to this, when they win it, they are rewarded with a trip to an outpost, and they go to that. Yeah. And then she sees her sister, and there's like this nice warm bubbly moment. And then Xaden's like,
Xaden has to come because his dragon couldn't keep it. 3 days was the max that
the mated pair of dragons could be. And then they go back and see, because there was a griffin attack, but her sister winds up being okay. And so then they get back, and then more political like subterfuge.
There's some bullshit with Dane that happens as well. Some people try to kill her and her dragon. The next big plot point is that her and Xaden, they make the sex.
No, not yet. She gets her power. That it happens after that.
And kills Jack Barlow.
What are you like? No, you're going out.
No, okay, fine. We'll summarize. So she gets into a situation. Jack Barlow is in the middle of it. She ends up killing him. Yes. And she ends up killing Jack Barlow with lightning.
Jack tried to kill Liam, and she got really angry. Her emotion, she finally gets her powers at an earlier point, but she doesn't have her signet, which is her X-Men power. And like during the fight, she's like, "Oh, Jack, like fuck you, you asshole," doing all this stuff, and she like literally lightnings him to death. And she's like really upset about it because like she's never killed anyone ever, and she's like, I am just like, I thought I wasn't like my mother, but I'm just like everybody else. Why I'm trying? And then out of nowhere, she was like, I was really hoping to get a useful power, like mending like my brother. And you're like, you have never mentioned that you wanted of that. You just wanted a power. Like that was it. Like what are you have never mentioned that you were hoping it would be useful.
You're a dragon rider. You're gonna kill people. And by this point she'd kind of made the decision like, oh, I actually like being a dragon rider. This is the thing I'm gonna continue to be. And yet she's like, oh, but I have to kill people. And Xaden And Dane is like, oh, you don't have to if you don't want to. And Xaden like grabs her and pushes her against the wall and is like, yes, you do. You have to kill people. And she's like, oh my God, his lips are like sculpted. It should be illegal for how hot he is. Why doesn't he have a permit for his beauty? And he's like, oh, tough love. But really, I'm agency, women, feminism.
Okay, so I do want to point out that it would be okay for her to still have this struggle in this situation if it was written in a way that built up to that, but it's not, so therefore it doesn't work.
And listen, I'm fine with someone killing someone for the first time and having a hard time with that. I'm not okay with her being like, my signet means I'm just a weapon. Why would I have a weapon signet that's just destructive? Other people, metallurgy can be useful in other, like,
she's never discussed any of that.
Dragon rider. You decided you wanted to be a dragon rider.
If anything, it should be electrifying.
Yeah, when you went back to the archives, you were like, this isn't my world anymore. I'm different now. Like, and I don't understand her. So anyway, she's having an identity crisis. And then, what's his face? Xaden comes in and is like, listen, I know what I said out there, but I was just trying to, like, it's okay and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, is there anything I can do to help you right now? And she's like, there's one thing
out your cock.
There's one thing you could do. And he's like, no, Violet, we can't do this. And she's like, yes, we can. Stop saying, I know you want me. And like, out of nowhere, she's like, I know you're into it too, buddy. Even though prior to this point, she's just been like, it's just me.
This is, I do have to say, this is actually one of the cringiest sex scenes, which I've read like weirder ones that, but are funny in their weirdness. But this is definitely one of the, like, when it, I don't like it.
So here's the problem with that. She is a romance writer and she is trying to write a romance scene here. So not only is it like rough, but it's also like passionate, and like romantic. And it's like, oh, the feelings involved and we love each other. Oh God, I need you in me. All that kind of absolute shit. And they talk a lot. And he says things like, oh my God, you feel so good. And she's like, you feel
There's
so
literally the line where it's like, and the kiss was hot and hard.
Yes.
Yeah, fuck.
And then like
What
I don't like the sliding in.
Me and Katie recently did a dissection of a very bad sex scene for 2 hours in terms of we look over the pros. By the way, we have a Patreon. We haven't mentioned it. It's 2.5 hours into the video. We never mention it. It's okay. It happens. But we break down a bunch of the things you shouldn't do in sex scenes. This scene does a lot of them.
Everything wrong.
And it's so cloying. Like, you can just feel that the author is trying to make it so passionate and romantic.
His voice was rough like velvet.
Velvet's not rough.
Level 1,000 sex because passion equals violent.
And then her lightning power ruins the armoire.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Her lightning powers go off while she's, like, feeling le petit mort. Mort.
I mean, he should just went down on her and left it at that and left, and that would have been way more like...
And also fitting, like, you want to relax, you want a bit of a release, I got you. But no, they have the...
No.
And like, they literally...
She needs him inside of her.
She literally lightning bolts everywhere.
And he protects her with the shadow, which, again, can just do things besides block light.
His velvet was like a rough boy.
His tongue was like a sandpaper. And the thing is, this starts off almost like a mini arc, with two of them are like, we can't be together after this, but we're gonna flirt mentally all the time, and we're like doing things together and eating lunch. And I noticed that you had some porridge, and I was like, oh my God, I wish I was that porridge. I don't think that actually happens.
But it's basically like that, because like the next day he's like, she's like, oh, we probably should go to bed, and he's like, I think it's something else we can do, and she's like, listen, I can't keep having sex with you. You said I can't fall for you, and I can't promise that I'm not going to do that. I'm an emotional woman. And so if you don't want to fall for me, we're just not going to have sex. And then they're like, okay, well, I guess this is what we're doing. And then like, well,
instantly 5 seconds later.
Literally a chapter, maybe 2 chapters later, they're doing it again.
One thing I did want to say is that, again, the thing is that once this scene happens, there's a little mini arc until they have sex again, which is awful and even worse, because this time they're saying I love you a lot in it. And how they are always together. But the thing about it is, like, why is this the relationship that is being paid attention to? We came for Dragon Rider, not for bullshit Xaden stuff.
There's so little Taryn or Andarna during this section.
This reminds me... Go ahead.
Well, and the other thing is that it feels like this should have been spread out more throughout the book, this tension between the two of them. It feels like this is very siloed from the rest of the book. And that, again, that's one of the things Maria talked about, again, about the beginning, about how Harry Potter is able to work all of these plots and string them out till they all come to a head at the end. But you're like, okay, I'm following from one plot to the next plot. In this one, it's like a thing happens, another thing happens, and then another thing happens. And they don't build on each other.
So there's a novel I read in my first year of college, and I don't remember what it was called at all, but it was legit a bodice ripper. Like, it was just porn with the veneer, the true veneer of fantasy. And it was a barbarian woman, like, army leader. And she gets stuck in a cave with a dragon, and they end up having a whole bunch of wild, crazy sex. And it's like, that's all it is, though, is sex.
How big
But
is
it
this
makes
dragon?
sense because that's what you were supposed to be there for.
Yeah,
you were
like,
just
you go-
supposed to be there for the sex.
You go into the book thinking that that's like, because
How big is the dragon?
The dragon's gigantic, but then he can turn into a human.
Oh, that's boring. That's some bullshit.
Yeah, I know.
Commit to the bit.
all the stuff Will is complaining about is happening. There's this revolution thing where, like, it's a celebration. It's July 1st, because I guess it had to be close to 4th of July. And there's this big party celebrating the end of the rebellion, which was, again, you know, the day that his dad and all the other rebel children's parents were killed. And so there's this big party happening for it, and she ends up going with Liam. The king is there, and, like, this world makes so little sense. The king is mentioned very briefly in the beginning, and then shows up at the end, and I forgot there was a king. I was like,
Yeah,
I
me
forgot
too.
I didn't know there was a king.
I forgot the world existed outside of this school, because it's just nothing. You don't hear about, like, you know, like, they're having a bad crop in this season. Like it just doesn't feel like a fleshed out world. It's just like, this school is it, and, like, this is the world. And the king's there, and he's, like, making comments, and then they're like, where is Xaden Ryerson? We like to keep an eye on him and make sure he's not doing bad things. And she's like, oh my god, Liam, I'm so sorry you have to be here right now. Everyone's being such a dick to you.
Yeah, there's a king, Celia. I know. I feel the same way.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, and so then she ends up going to find Ryerson, because he's like, she knows he's upset because this was the day his dad died, and so she goes to find him, and he's on the parapet, and she's in a dress. Like, she had to get into her dress uniform, which you could choose a skirt with a slit, or you could choose pants, and, like, so everybody's in, like, prom, basically, like, dragon rider prom outfits.
This is one of those books where, like, they just dress up to be hot, and everyone's like, oh, babe, you're so hot, like the women say to each other, and you're like,
But we don't even have that moment, barely.
we got it. It's wish fulfillment. So she goes out and, okay, imagine anime for a moment, and Xaden is on the parapet, and there's, like, a storm around him, and she's like, I've got to walk out on the parapet in this dress. And she goes onto there, and he's like, you idiot, why are you walking out here? I have shadows. Shadows can apparently pick up things if they fall. Again, what is this shadow propaganda? I don't like it. Shadows can block light. That's all they do. And the thing is, a shadow actually isn't even a thing. It's a lack of a thing. So really, his power should be entropy, which are like leeching energy or heat from something. And she's like, but I needed you. Or I'm sorry.
And I love you, and we, like, I need you to open up to me, and let's be together, and da da da, and I love you, and I know you love me, and we need to be together. And so this is them having their emotional moment, and then they have sex, and he's like, you're mine now, and you will be mine. I don't deserve you, but you'll be mine forever. They have a terrible sex scene, and then at the end of the sex scene, or in the middle of the sex scene, like, they end up from evening all the way until 4:15. They're still going. He's in the middle of doing things to her when somebody knocks on the door, and they're like, guys, we're under attack, and they all have to muster, and people are getting out of their clothes, and
But then they're not actually really attack. It's all
part of their war games. And, like, we earlier, that scene with where she killed Jack Barlow was a war game thing, and this war game is where they are getting sent to actual parts of the country, and they're simulating an actual war scenario where the wings are getting sent to different areas. The wing leader has to control the different squads and tell them what to do, blah blah blah. And earlier in the scene,
I'll be right back, guys. I gotta run to the bathroom.
Why do you keep admitting to people that you pee? It's gross.
I knew he was gonna say that shit.
It is.
she can't hear you.
Katie disappeared for some reason. We don't know why. Basically, what happens is there's some war games, and then basically,
Oh, this is the part where she gets her saddle. Like, she goes there, and her dragon, like, has a saddle on it, and she's like, a saddle? I can't use this. And he's like, I designed it with what's his face, and somehow Taryn can put this thing on by himself. I can understand him being able to take it off. Like, I imagine, like, he can press something and it just, like, but being able to put it on by himself makes no sense.
Insane. He does not have opposable thumbs. Basically, they have to go on a mission thing, and they end up going to a spot, and she finds out that Xaden has been in league with the Griffin Riders. And also, this whole time you've been thinking, how do shitty griffins manage against dragons? And it's actually because they're smaller and they're kind of shitty. Like, they're a fake threat on the border type of a thing. And she finds out they've been working together, and that's because he's been smuggling them, like, this special magic from their wards. Because what we don't know is that there are these terrible evil mages.
Remember the thing I mentioned earlier, that book of fables that has those terms that don't get talked about? They get mentioned halfway through the book, and basically the idea is you can channel magic through dragons, through griffins, or directly from the earth. But if you do it directly from the earth, it's called being a Vivin.
It sounds a lot like Venom. Like a Vinen.
A Vinen. And the Vinens are like...
Vernon?
No, there's no R in it.
Really?
Guys, let us know if there's an R in it. But anyway, and the Venin are like, they're basically, it is Venin.
The vermin.
They're like the evil, like, if you guys saw that.
They're the Sith.
No. You know the D&D movie that came out recently? There was that lady who had like the stuff around her eyes.
Yeah, she's the Sith.
And it's basically like evil cult, but they lose their humanity and die earlier because they're using the magic directly from the ground.
Sith.
It's an unchanneled tap on magic, and it affects them, and they become bad. But they also make wyvern, which are dragons, but evil dragons. But so Xaden has been helping these Griffin Riders because even though everyone in the nation she lives in thinks that Vinen and wyvern are myths and don't exist, if you're outside of that kingdom, you know that they do exist. They're kept out by the wards that keep their place safe. But all the countries outside are being attacked, specifically the country with the Griffin Riders, are being attacked by Vinen, who are just like Venin, who are just fucking stuff up and like decimating villages. And the only thing that will kill the Venin is the material that is used to power their wards. And so like you think at first that the wards are just magic that they're casting on places, but no, in the last third of the book, suddenly the wards are powered by specific rocks.
Wait, what? I missed that part because I was going at 2 times speed.
Yeah.
Or actually I was going at 2.5 times speed.
Earlier, because they literally talk about how her sister can do really good wards and shields.
Yeah.
And so for the majority of the book, wards are described as entirely magical.
Like spells.
And then in the last third of the book, wards have a physical element that you can take, turn into weapons, and those are the only thing that can kill the Venin.
But that doesn't make any... Wait.
And that's why the wards along the edges of the southern area were coming...
put a ward on her door and it was like a spell. So why is it... Is it just because it's stronger?
She is not a good author.
She did not think this through.
No, but that's my point. She did not think this through. She like wrote a thing. But anyway, and he has been, what he's been doing is not anything that would actually hurt their nation. He's just been helping the Griffin Riders defend themselves against the Venin, and being able to defend themselves. And basically, when they get to the place where they're supposed to, like, where she discovers this, the next place they have to go to is the actual citadel or, like, fortress that they're supposed to be defending. But when they get there, it's empty. And there's a little note from one of the generals saying, you can either leave this place, you can, like, you have a choice. You can come and you have enough time to get to the new location where you can continue on with your orders, or you can be there. And the thing is, there is an attack by Venin happening. The sooner you learn to let go and stop thinking, Katie, the less it will hurt. And basically, they put him in an impossible choice. The ruling, and what this tells you is the ruling government knows that the Venin exist. This confirms a couple things. Number one, the ruling government knows the Venin exist. The rebellion that his father led before was literally to be like, hey, we are letting innocent people die outside of our borders. We have the ability to help them. We should help them. And then, they were murdered and killed. But that the ruling, like, her mom knows about the Venin. The generals know about the Venin, because they're basically saying, you have a choice. You can be loyal and come and finish up the war games, or you can defend these innocent people from dying. But if you do that, you're disloyal, which is like the dumbest thing. And also, like, why are they not dealing with this threat? These guys are like super powerful. At some point, they're going to be a problem. And his dragon, Sigale, and Terran are like, yeah, fuck these. The Venin are pretty bad. Why is every dragon okay with this setup? Why is every dragon okay with being like letting this happen outside, because like the dragons and the griffins can communicate and aren't actually like Sigale and Taryn don't have bad feelings toward them. And so like why are just these two dragons and like everybody else's dragons okay with this? Because like all of the other rebel children came with their dragons to defend this city, and all of those dragons are okay, which means how is Navarre convincing all the rest of the dragons not to deal with this threat? Like it makes no sense.
The thing is, this battle is supposed to be big and rousing because it's like, we got no chance, but we gotta survive. We gotta help the civilians escape. Like, we can't let the innocents die. And there's a part where they're like, I'm a dragon rider. I got it. My job is to protect the weak. And I'm like,
we protect the innocent.
That was never brought up at all.
At no point in any of your training were people like, we always fight for the little
We're
guy.
valorous.
No, it's literally this entire time. It's been nothing like that. There's been no
follow rules, take your orders, do the thing.
This is supposed to be like a big battle, and they fight. And like, to be honest, I couldn't quite follow what was going on because I didn't care. But the thing about it is, it's supposed to be very much like the sex scenes. It's supposed to be very intense and emotional, but it just isn't, because you don't care about her connection with Ternanok. You don't really understand. Like, a lot of the other characters, I didn't even really know who they were. There's one character, Liam, who people liked, and he dies. But again, it's not even as sad as a random dragon dying in Temeraire, because the book just has not built up those relationships whatsoever. And then at the end of the battle, she gets poisoned in like the leg by one of the vermin. And basically they're like, oh no, we mostly survived, but she's injured. We got to take her to somewhere. And so they take her somewhere.
And if we take her back to Viscayeth, it'll be... And she immediately, like, realizes the venin are real. He's fighting for a good cause. And she's, like, pissed at him because she's like, you lied to me. You didn't let me in.
Well, no shit, but she's been understanding of this... Never mind, it's fine.
Yeah, because she immediately is like, oh yeah, this is an actual threat. I'm on your side, but how dare you keep this from me? Like, if you're understanding enough to immediately go, yeah,
then why would you ask that?
My immediate thing would be like, I understand why you hit it. You needed to.
But no, there's this whole bullshit of like, but I opened up to you and you didn't open up to me. It's not that you hit it, it's how easily you hit it. And I'm like, what?
And not just that, the reason they got caught and this whole thing got set up was because her friend Dane, when he touches people's faces, he can see a recent memory.
And so at some point he got that memory.
Yes, he touched her, and it was at a point where Xaden told her that he went to this other place. He didn't say why, he didn't say anything, he just said that him and some people went to this one town, and that's how they knew. Like, Dane obviously snitched, but also, how did he get that specific memory? Like, that's nowhere near what happened in the plot of, like, can he dig through memories and be like, show me sedition? Like, I don't understand. But anyway, the whole point that he makes is like, it wasn't you, your friend Dane is literally... And then she also then learns, like, hey, because I opened up and told you one thing, this entire situation happened. And then she's still pissed off at him about it at the end, where she's like, you should have told me. No, your friend Dane can touch your face and get any of your memories. What the fuck? Like, I'm sorry. I don't like Xaden, but no, you do not tell the lady with the friend who can read minds anything.
And basically, they go to a secret city because this is not enough of a ripoff of Rysand. There's a secret city that they've been rebuilding this whole time beneath the nose of whatever their country is called. And again, and they have a conversation where she wakes up, and this is all told from Xaden's point of view, where he talks about needing to fuck her, like, physically. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Dude, when the audiobook switched to the man's voice and the man was doing her voice, it was such a character shift from the fucking female's voice. It's because it's like kind of, riotous and loud and bratty, and then when it's from Xaden's perspective, it's like, no, I'm okay. And I'm like,
it's really funny.
You lied to me. I gave you. I trusted you, and I opened myself up to you, and I cannot trust you again.
Oh my god, so
and it's
fucking
again,
dumb.
like, you are being ridiculous. You are literally the reason that whole shit went down, because your friend touched your face. So yeah, no, he was right. But anyway, she's mad at him, and we don't get resolution of their relationship. She's like, you have to earn my trust, and he's like, oh my god, it every day.
Fucking.
And then her brother Brennan, who she thought was dead for the past 6 years, walks in and is like, welcome to the revolution, sis. And that's how the book ends. You're welcome.
All right, we're 3 hours in, guys. Can we... This is awful.
It's bad. See? It's bad. It's an awful book.
And then Lindbergh says, which I think sums it up well. And then later, when Xaden in his POV goes, "She's half dead, but so sexy, I get hard by looking at her."
Yep.
Specifically, he talks about how he's hard all the time looking at her. He was hard from the first moment he saw her.
That sounds like a medical issue.
It's really disgusting, honestly, how the romance is written. I get that, like, I'm not a bodice ripper person, but, like, I'm a shipper. I love sappy things. I like the sex scenes, but, like, this is just, it's written in such a cloying way, and it's also written in a way where the romance is not set up with the emotional beats that it needs to feel authentic, so it just feels overwrought and kind of gross. And like if you ever picked up a phone and somebody else, they're sexting their significant other, and you're like, ugh, I did not want to think about this.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
That's this entire book. It's a mess of a book. It's popular because it's very, I don't know. I don't know why bad things are popular. I don't know, guys.
I just think it got marketed well, probably.
Oh yeah, they marketed the shit out of it.
It's just a really good market. Like either she had
the amount of good reviews though. The amount of people.
Well, does that surprise you? There's plenty of bad books that get good reviews.
It's so.
If this book was half the length, I would not really have a problem with it. If it was half the length,
and if it just was a shameless bodice ripper,
yeah, and if it was just a shameless bodice ripper, if there was more of an effort to keep tension throughout, that's part of the problem. Is that it's just like things happen one moment to another, and they don't necessarily feel like they're building on each other. There's no kind of matching the tension, the laying out the plot line so they all come together at the end. The battle at the end feels weirdly perfunctory, and yet like the author thinks it's really important. But it's been like the end. It's like the last half hour of like 20 hours. I despair in humanity. I don't know why people aren't smarter.
There's a very large explanation for that. But also, side note, Angry Otter.
Angry Otter, by the way, says it's a beach read if you want to spend 22 hours being irradiated.
What I'm picturing as a beach read is I'm picturing like a 38-year-old mom of 3 while various aged kids are down by the water, and she and her vaguely wealthy middle-class husband have gotten a hotel room at Daytona Beach for a week, and this is what she reads every day while she's sitting out getting her tan.
Demand better.
That is what I picture. This right here. Someone in the Discord was talking about it's appealing because you can turn off your brain. Yeah, exactly that too.
You can, or it forces you to. Much in the same way that trauma causes your higher brain functions to shut down.
This requires and would like little thinking on your part. Like, again, don't ask questions.
So do we recommend this book? No.
1,000 times no.
We have a Patreon. Join it.
I would like to highlight.
Oh, yeah, you wanted to highlight some stuff.
Some comments. Nethla says, I feel bad now that most of my comments on 9 Fox Gambit above were, if not criticism, then at least critical. I feel like that's my job as a book club member. But compared to Fourth Wing, it deserves nothing but praise. Another comparison. ACOTAR was formulaic melodrama for a very specific audience and presumably also satisfying some author's self-insertiness. But its biggest issue for me was how frigging boring it was and patronizingly long in descriptions and broken dialogue. Conversely, Fourth Wing was a blast in one sense. It was nonstop, that's for sure. I feel like I have a concussion. The melodrama was overt. It affected the character profiles as well as the prose setting and plot. The pace was fast, thank goodness, because every other sentence is ticking some box to this formula, the story formula. I feel like the author was literally slamming you repeatedly against a wall, and after about 2 chapters, I felt nothing anymore. Not even irritation. Oh, except the pain around my forehead because I spent so much time rolling my eyes. Still forgettable. Then we have Lindbergh. Ah, Fourth Wing, it is you. I wish I could say it was a pleasure to make your acquaintance, but I do not believe in lies. You pose in the guise of a thrilling adventure, and like a Venus flytrap, you snare young innocents with your promises of friendship and deadly dragons, of struggle to survive in a competition against the odds, of tall, dark strangers and the lure of romance. But as a careless foot treads on one of your hidden barbs, you close the teeth on them. I wish you had made yourself known to me as your true self. An aggressively tropey romp around Fantasylandia with Mary Sue and Gary Stu, thirsty as people lost in the desert, dark and toxic as a tropa belladonna. If you had come to me in honesty, Fourth Wing, I would have spared myself your spiritual, intellectual lobotomy.
Jesus Christ, Lindbergh! Better written than the book itself.
Fine.
It was, and it's longer. Like,
fine.
I can't highlight it, but I didn't even read the whole thing. There was, Thea says, I will say that for the most part, I found Fourth Wing to be a compelling dumpster fire. I did not like a single thing about it, but I was entertained. This is the first time I understood the meaning of so bad, it's good. And then they go into a deeper thing. And Thea was also the one who linked their friend's article about the ableist narrative of toxic perseverance, which we can link it in the description. And then It's Valerie says, Baby's First World Building, a fantasy romance for aging millennial women who are discovering reading again after the first time since they read Twilight.
Oh my God,
I'm telling
Valerie! Whoa!
Our pages are pretty funny.
They spicy.
That was a very spicy one. Jesus.
Thank you for being here with us, our patrons. You're fantastic. Please join our Patreon. It's a good time.
All right, sign us out.
Bye, guys.
Bye.